We ask these ancestors to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. In the name of the African ancestors who began the march of humankind in the womb of Mother Africa and marched down the Nile, laying the foundations for human civilization and culture, we ask these Africans to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. In the name of these African ancestors who built their pyramids and their temples to their God concepts, to their principles, and to their moral values, who left us a legacy of architecture and monumental building unparalleled in the history of the world, we ask these ancestors who built the pyramids, who built the temples, to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. We ask these African ancestors who took this African culture and extended it throughout Africa, building the stone cities of Zimbabwe, building the empires of the Sudan, Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, building the Swahili city-states along the east coast of Africa, and in Christian Africa, asking King Lalibela and giving him the courage to build the 12 churches of Lalibela from the ground down, monuments to the world. We ask these Africans to spread this culture to the Dogo and to the Akan and to the Yoruba and to the Bankongo and to the Zulu. We ask these Africans to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. In the name of the Africans who opened up Africa, opened up the Nile Valley to other cultures and other peoples, and they came in and nurtured themselves on the African greatness. First coming in early with the ancient Hebrews, and they synthesized this culture and produced Judaism. Later coming in were the Christians, and they synthesized this culture and produced Christianity. Coming in were also the Greeks, who took the African culture, synthesized it, and produced Greek civilization. And then later, the Prophet Muhammad, and with the Arabs coming into the Nile Valley, they synthesized the culture and produced Islam. We ask these African ancestors, who as part of their legacy laid the foundations for Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and Greek civilization, to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. We ask those African ancestors pulled out of Africa, taken to the hells of North America, South America, the Caribbean, maintaining the spirit of African humanity in their hearts and in their minds, and who left us this enormous legacy of struggle. We ask those Africans who resisted enslavement in the villages of Africa, who resisted enslavement in the shores of Africa, who resisted enslavement in the forts and dungeons, who resisted enslavement in the holds of those ships, who resisted enslavement when they arrived on these shores in the New World. We ask these Africans who ran into the highlands of northeast Brazil and established for 100 years the first free republic in the Americas, the Republic of Palmares, and their last great leader, Zumbi, who speared and sacrificed. We ask these Africans who replicated the Brazilian experience and went into the highlands of Jamaica and became the maroon-free communities. We ask these Africans who went into the backwoods of the Guyanas and Suriname and created free republic of the Suramaka and the Ajuka. We ask these Africans who went into the backwoods of Georgia and the swamps of Florida and moved with the Seminole Indians and resisted oppression. We ask these Africans who left us a legacy of struggle and resistance, the likes of which no one in the world has, to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future. We ask these Africans who created and laid for us a foundation of struggle and resistance that was passed on generation after generation, that was passed on to Harriet Tubman, who fought her way out of enslavement and became a symbol of freedom for all of us. Similarly, Frederick Douglass and hundreds of thousands of others fought their way out of enslavement. We asked those Africans who went with Boukman Dessalines to create the greatest revolutionary experience in the history of the world, the Haitian Revolution, leaving us a legacy, the likes of which no one else has had. We ask these Africans to be with us, to strengthen us, and give us a vision for the future.
Let us start our class with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Bhagavan Krishna, Mahavatar Babaji, Larima Shai, Swami Shri Yukteswarji, our Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda Ji, Saints of all religions, we bow to all of you. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Great Gurus, receive our love, receive our desire, to love you more, to attune our hearts and minds with your great presence. Om. Peace.
Speak truth to the people. To identify the enemy is to free the mind. Free the mind of the people. Speak to the mind of the people. Speak truth. Hide nothing from the masses of the people. Tell no lies. Expose lies whenever they are told. Mask no difficulties, mistakes, failures. Claim no easy victory. When we lose our African connection, we lose our world connection. When we disconnect ourselves from Africa, we cease to be a world people. Without the African connection, we are a disjointed people, begging for the entry into somebody else's house.
I acknowledge my ancestors upon whose shoulders I stand. Blessed are those who forge ahead to make way for others to follow. You're inside of the Africa Forum. This is Running African. Our vision is to reunite the African family for development. Our mission includes blazing new paths towards Africa's rendezvous with destiny, bearing witness, demanding change, crafting an African-centered agenda for change and development, all the while honoring my moral obligation to remember.
Sign up for the JN Money Card. It's safe, convenient, and free. The time by JN Money is
15 now after 6 o'clock.
We have been very clinical, very strategic, very deliberate, and very committed to reducing the ultimate index of violence in the society, which is the murder rate. It was one of those intractable problems that many of you would have thought Jamaica would never be in that position. Aside from El Salvador, Jamaica is the only country in the region to have achieved this.
The proceeding was brought to you by the Office of the Prime Minister.
Jamaica, the countdown is on! Reggae music! February 28th and March 1st at Hope Gardens, Kingston. Experience 2 unforgettable days of music and culture at the Lost in Time Festival. Featuring Chronics, Protege, Leela Ike, Jester Royal, Jenai Mortimer, Tisanchin, Dennis Stevens, Diani, and many more. Tickets available at Kaya Kingston and Drax Hall, the live store in Pimento's Devon House, and online at lostintimefestival.com. Lost in Time Festival. Don't miss the moment. Bill Express is the exclusive in-store top-up partner of the National Rural School Bus Program. Top up your school bus card at any of over 300 Bill Express locations. Tell your cashier your top-up amount and the characters on your card. Your card will be updated in minutes. Top up your National Rural School Bus card at any Bill Express today. Fees discounted to $25 until April 30. Only Bill Express gives you so many ways to pay. Children under 15 must be accompanied by an adult. Go to BillExpress.com for the full list of locations. Bill Express is a proud member of the Grace Kennedy Financial Group.
Fall in love with your home with new appliances and furniture from Singer. Come see our new line of Frigidaire gas stoves starting at a special introductory price as low as $46,995. Get free detergent or laundry baskets with Speed Queen washer or dryer purchase. Score new low prices on Setron stoves and refrigerators, plus buy Serta mattresses and get 20% off basis. Only Singer has 4 months for cash, 9 months no interest, and up to 24 months to pay. For deals you will love, shop at Singer today.
Taxi! Yo, taxi man, give me a charter. How much a charter? Start jam offer tea for go and Edgewater.
My own in a car stranger. Public transport operators, the People's Station Irie FM continues to put a spotlight on you with Red Plate Spotlight. Yes, you can win big, up to $50,000 5 days per week by keeping locked into the nation's #1 Irie FM. All you have to do is send in your plate number via WhatsApp to 876-350-2838 and just tune in to the 107s to hear when your plate is announced. Remember, it's not if, it's when. You don't have to send your plate more than once. As one sent in, it will be announced some random day, giving you 20 minutes to claim your cash prize. No name or personal information required to enter, just your red plate number. That's Red Plate Spotlight, putting a spotlight on public transport operators like no other radio station can. Red Plate Spotlight is brought to you by Tiles R Us, Balance Valley, St. Elizabeth. For tiles, tools, every household fixture. Call 965-1896. Tiles R Us. Franco Brakes and Clutch Manufacturing, Stewart Town, St. Mary. We make your old brakes and clutch new. Call 278-4844.
Unique Records promoting the new track Give Thanks by Iwad, the Universal singer, from his album Clear Blue Skies. Find it on all platforms.
In everything, we gotta give thanks. Despite of everything, it could be worse.
.20, 20 minutes after 6 o'clock. It is Sunday, March 1, 2026. What a morning, what a morning, what a morning. All kinds of stuff happening in the studio, but we're good, we're cool. Thank you so much, Shane. Shane Unstoppable. My name is Kabu Ma'at Kiru. We're going through until 10 o'clock. That's when the big A comes in with the Sunday sunshine. Big team this morning. Peter Broadbar is in the house. We're streaming live. In a little while, you'll be able to not just listen to us, but watch us on YouTube. Also on, we're in YouTube. We are on Facebook, that I'm sure of, at least those two for now. Both YouTube and Facebook. So Irie FM YouTube, welcome. You are probably hearing the audio now and not seeing us yet, but you'll see us in a little while. Welcome also, as usual, on the 107s. 107.1 all the way to 107.9. On the internet at iriefm.net. On Flow Channel 822 Digiplay. On your mobile apps at Google Play Store. Just download the app and you've got us. This morning, all you have to do is to go to YouTube, Irie FM YouTube, and we're good. We're sharing that. Thank you so much, Peter Broadbore, working very, very hard behind the scenes to ensure that we're up and running in the way that we should be. Near Munifa Taishi, Williams Green. My daughter is our in-studio broadcast assistant assisting. Shanice, is that you? Shanika, you here this morning? Who do we have this morning? Let me know.
The time is not far. Oh my majesty, please rescue me. Oh my.
Shanice Janky, I think is in the house. Shanice, you there? No. All right. So the team is in the house and we're getting ready to carry this very important program to you. In just a little while, we've got a very packed program this morning. As you know, we are waking up, and we woke up yesterday morning, and we're waking up this morning again to what many are terming an existential crisis. What we do know, though, is that we're talking about war and rumors of war. And there's hardly anywhere that you can go to get information. All right, so we're live now. We're live on YouTube. So I'm seeing you clearly. Hope you're seeing me. We are live. Wow. You know, I should have done some work in the studio before we went live. Peter, I mean, it's all messy behind me, but it's okay. Forgive us. Right, so we're on YouTube live now. We're on YouTube and Facebook, right, Peter? So we're on YouTube and Facebook live. Go to IRFM YouTube and you're catching us live online. Or on Facebook, IRFM, we're live there. So we're in the middle of a war, and we're going to be talking about this morning through our lens, our Pan-African lens. Remember that we see things through our particular spectrum, which is the African spectrum. So we've got a packed program for you. In just about 5 minutes, we're going to be going on to my very first guest, Professor Hilburn Watson, and he's no stranger to IRIA FM. He's no stranger to the program.
Yeah, war in Pakistan. War in India. Yeah, war in Soweto. I say war in Johannesburg. And let's say war in South Africa.
In the meantime, it is a sound of Peter Tosh, of course, talking about war, rumors of war. Professor Hilburn Watson, of course, was a 2015 Lifetime Achievement Award winner at the Caribbean Studies Association. He's been a member for over 35 years. I think much more than that. Professor Hilburn Watson is Emeritus of International Relations at Bucknell University. He attended his first CSA conference in Castries, St. Lucia in 1976, so that tells you somewhat. He was elected to the CSA Executive Council in 1988, and he's been there for a while. He served as vice president, he served as president, and as immediate past president. He graduated from Howard University, and we told you about him last time, so we don't want to spend too much of a time talking about Professor Hilburn Watson, but just so you know, and this is one of the reasons why he's on with us. And you know, we have been talking to him about not just the wars that we're facing now, but so much more. We've talked to him about Cuba, we've talked to him about Venezuela. Until his retirement in 2013, Professor Watson taught the Modern World System Foundation Seminar, Theories of International Relations, Seminar in International Relations, Global Restructuring, Race, Nation, State, and International Relations Caribbean. He specialized in areas within international political economy, international relations, and political theory. And that, I think, should give you an idea of some of the reasons why we keep carrying on Professor Watson time and time and time again. Such a valuable, knowing and knowledgeable African and human being. Professor Watson also has written numerous articles, peer-reviewed journal articles. He also, let me tell you about one of them at least, The Grenada Revolution, Reflections and Lessons, and also in the Canadian Journal of Latin American and Caribbean Studies, the publication Globalization, Sovereignty, and Citizenship in the Caribbean, and so much more. He's been writing extensively about the current climate that we're in, the current geopolitical climate that we find ourselves in. And one of the things that he's very aware of and cognizant of is how it is all connected. So this morning, we're going to be having this conversation with Professor Watson about what we are now facing, the geopolitical upheaval, how this is reshaping Africa, how this is reshaping the diaspora, the Caribbean, and also we want to look a bit at Cuba. We're going to spend some time on Cuba. He's a geopolitical analyst, of course, and so we have a whole lot to get through. What's happening in Iran, what's happening in the region. Here we have Israel and the United States launching what they are calling a preemptive strike on Iran, more a preventative strike. What does international law say about that? Going to be having that conversation. I know I've received many calls from so many of our Pan-African, African-centered, cultural history buffs who have posed the exact same question, which is to say, what is really happening? And why? And why now? And what does this mean? And what's the end game? I suppose we all have these questions, and I don't think we have the answers. But there are those who have been looking at this for a very long time and are more than ready and willing to talk about this. Professor Hilburn Watson is one such person. All right, I'm going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we will have this conversation with Professor Watson.
You know it's always national. The time by National Baking Company is
now 6:31.
Ocean Joy Restaurant, Bar and Lounge, wine tasting experiences, and every other Sunday 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. with live saxophonist. 198 Jimmy Cliff Boulevard, Montego Bay. Call 658-214-5462 for reservations.
Your security is our priority at Island Alert, the best in safeguarding you and your property. We're located at 17 Ward Avenue, Mandeville, Manchester, and 18 North Street, Montego Bay. Book us at Island Alert Security at 876-216-9327 or 416-8181. Island Alert, your security, our priority.
You scoop the boy there. And
that's your pick.
That's you pick. You get scooped.
Good with it, you know. Come scoop with me, Courtney Max, with the WTS Breakfast Party, 9 to 10 a.m. Nollium Game Day.
Then clock in with me now to see my Francis. I'm in the league. On 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Catch a Dog Scoop, Hot Scoop, and E-Scoop. Great and trip left.
Then at 6:15 p.m. we link up
for a live performance and a bag of things from your favorite artists.
Watch it live online at irfm.net for free.
What's the scoop? WTS, the hot spot.
Yes, sir. Every Saturday. Kiko.
T20 powerhouse, the West Indies, is among 19 teams aiming to topple defending champions India at the 10th edition of the ICC Men's T20 World Cup, to be hosted by India and Sri Lanka from February 7 to March 8, 2026. The Windies will battle the likes of England, Bangladesh, Nepal and Italy at the group stage in their quest to secure a third hold on the trophy.
History for the West Indies. What a match we've had here.
The Sporting Choice IRFM will provide matchday summaries involving the West Indies, along with the semi-finals and final, with noted Caribbean cricket commentator Andrew Mason. Matchday summaries from the Men's T20 World Cup on IRFM comes to you courtesy of Boscobel Hardware, Stuart Town, St. Mary. Call 876-810-6978. Special now on steel, plyboard, fans and much more at Boscobel Hardware, where every day is a sale day.
Massive auto parts and car sales. Link us first. Pineapple Auto Rails. Call 876-298-6413. We got you covered. Sparklers Auto Parts, your one-stop shop for auto parts and accessories. Visit us at Shop 2 Rexo Plaza, Ocho-Rios, or 7 Gully Road, St. Anne's Bay.
And Skymar Building Supplies and Hardware, Highgate, St. Mary. Open every day, including Sundays and public holidays. Call Skymar at 876-724-1890. That's matchday summaries from the ICC Men's T20 World Cup in India and Sri Lanka from February 7 to March 8 on the People's Station, IRE FM.
Oh, heaved into the leg side. Oh, West Indies, that helps.
All right, we're back with you inside of the Africa Forum. This is Running African. And yes, we are trying to make that connection with Professor Hilburn Watson. He's on the line. We're just trying to make that Zoom connection. It seems to be he seems to be having just a teeny bit of problem. We're going to fix it shortly. So stand by. Let me just tell you who else we have coming up in the program shortly, because obviously we're going to be looking at this global war. We're going to be talking about how this geopolitical upheaval is impacting us, and really also to look at, as Pan-Africans, as Jamaicans, as Africans across the world, how do we begin to make sense of what's happening around us. Also, going to be speaking with Dr. Arthur Green. He'll be joining me in studio. We're going to be looking at America First Global Health Strategy, which is also part of the bigger war, right? Because we're talking about war this morning. All right, I do think that we have a professor online. I just saw him. I think he's there. Oh, great, Professor Watson. How are you?
I'm reasonably good this morning. Hope you're doing good also.
All right, we're seeing you, and I hope you're seeing us okay.
Yes, I'm seeing you. Yes.
And hearing us okay. All right. So I'm looking away just so that I'm looking directly in the camera. No. Professor Watson, what a time! What a time we're living in.
Yes, it is a heck of a time. We are seeing the monstrosity of the rulers of this country who believe, because they are in deep crisis, that they have a right to behave in the most unusual, destructive ways for humanity. They have never cared about humanity. They have always been there to take what they can take. And right now, the behavior is consistent with the deepening crisis of American hegemony. So deception is an integral part of the ideological strategy of ruling classes. Misleading people is standard since they tend to control information. But we are at this point in the world where broad popular access to information has become more normal, and they cannot deceive and get away with it. Now, on this broader question, I have argued consistently that this issue in the Middle East with Israel and the Palestinian people, for example, has a much longer history that goes back at least to the end of the First World War. Then Palestine was made a mandated territory with the fall of the Ottoman Empire, and Britain was assigned responsibility for Palestine. And it was in that moment that you began to have the flow of Jews from Britain and other parts of Europe into Palestine. Now, the British military was set up there, and they facilitated that while the Palestinians were arguing, look, there's enough land here for all of us. And the Jews were saying, no, we want that land. Now, they had a long history of claiming that that was their promised land, the original homeland, which have no historical evidence to support it. And what we have also known is for the 3,000 to 4,000 years of the occupation of that area, Jews never controlled it effectively for more than 200 years, and that was on an intermittent basis, not on a consistent basis. But they constructed a narrative and propagated that narrative to mislead people. And in our circles, you know, if you go back to the Old Testament and all those doctrines, you always heard that this is God's chosen people and so on. Let me just interject here that I have a friend in Barbados who was married to an Israeli woman. They moved to Barbados. He worked for the UN in the region. And when they moved to Barbados, I visited them, and she was sitting there telling me she has spent time in the IDF, the Jewish Defense Force. And she said to me, all that land in that area belongs to us. God gave it to us, but we don't want it. They can keep it. I said, no, you're wrong. What is the evidence for? Well, I said, no. She said to me, what do you do? I said, I'm a university professor, and I have taught. Oh, I didn't know that, blah, blah, blah. Anyhow, but she was trained in the military and internalized that ideology that all that land, Iraq and Syria and all of it, is part of their historical gift from some God.
So there's a theological or biblical, if you will, perspective to this that we cannot ignore. This is what I hear you saying.
Yes, it's an ideology. It's not a statement of fact. Anyhow, because metaphors are always used to influence how we think. But today, in the contemporary, you will notice that the Israelis construct themselves as victims. They are victims and the others are aggressors. But the first Prime Minister of Israel, Ben Gurion, said, look, let's be clear. This land belongs to those people. It's not ours. We want it and we are taking it. By 1948, therefore, with the founding of Israel through United Nations partitioning, then they went on the rampage and started doing more openly, looting, stealing, killing, victimizing, dehumanizing, and none of that has stopped really. So this is the contemporary moment. But look at what has happened to Syria, look at what has happened to Libya, look at what has happened to Iraq, Yemen, and all around. And the aim of the Israeli state, which is a very brutal killing machine like that of the United States, is to make sure that none of the neighboring countries have the ability or capacity to defend themselves and their people. And the Trumpian project is about that. He has received and is receiving massive amount of money from Zionist billionaires in the United States to do what is being done at this particular moment. And there is no autonomous Israel in these matters. Without the United States, they could hardly be doing what they're doing.
So the United States is totally controlled by the...
Control. They could stop it tomorrow if they wanted to, but Trump gets enough money from the Zionist billionaires to for himself to steal and loot, because these are the most corrupt elements you can face. That's why he is there bombing Iran at this particular moment. Not just for that, but think of China's Belt and Road project. China is a target. He is about destroying any prospect for building any unity at the human level to go forward, because he doesn't have the capacity to be really human.
When you take into consideration Mark Carney's speech at the WEF just a few weeks ago at Davos, and also when you bear in mind that he was one of the first to come out to agree with and support Israel's and America's action in Iran, How do you, putting on your years of academic professional hat in this particular field, how are we to analyze this? What does this mean? How do you see this?
Okay, so here is how I see it. Now, I've been following the coverage, and I have not seen much that has told me what is fundamental to the framework that we are dealing with today. Keep in mind that there's a deepening crisis of global capitalism, what a friend of mine calls an epochal crisis in a recent book he has put out, my friend William Robinson out of UC Santa Barbara. And in that work, he is arguing that we are facing what is called a strategic crisis of the overaccumulation of capital, and there are trillions of dollars just flowing around without profitable investable opportunities. And it is in this particular context that we are witnessing many of the fundamental problems. Now, what is that? You look around, Canada, Australia, the United States, Britain, and others are feeling all of the if you will, the contradictory characteristics of this thing. They want to have opportunities. We don't have a standard way of expanding capitalism, so you have to go back, reconfigure, you have to steal, you have to loot. And in this particular context, if they are to get anywhere near to what they have in mind or would desire, you have to draw down on the military stockpiles, destroy them by bombing and killing and looting, making wars, so you can restructure the process of producing for the military. That's one way. That has happened over time. We can go back to the 70s. We can look at some of the literature then, which said that one way of recalibrating capitalism is to deepen military production so that jobs and services come to rely heavily on the military sector, if you will.
Hold that point for me, Professor, because I'm going to come back to that. Recalibrating capitalism. Let me take a quick break and come right back.
Sure.
To identify the enemy is to free the mind. Free the mind of the people. Speak to the mind of the people. Speak truth. Hide nothing from the masses of the people. Tell no lies. Expose lies whenever they are told. Mask no difficulties, mistakes, failures. Claim no easy victory. When we lose our African connection, we lose our world connection. When we disconnect ourselves from Africa, we cease to be a world people. Without the African connection, we are a disjointed people, begging for the entry into somebody else's house.
We're back with you inside of the Africa Forum. This is Running African. Professor Hilburn Watson is live with us on Zoom. And by the way, we're streaming live on our social media platforms. So YouTube and Facebook. Peter just left the studio. I'm not quite sure if we're on IG. But we are on most of our social media platforms. And then just to say, as usual, we are on the 107s, IRFM 107.1 all the way to 107.9. We are at irfm.net. So all you have to do is go irfm.net and it's free, right? You can also download the app and you can listen to us anywhere in the world. That is also free. You have no excuse not to check us out at IRFM many, many different ways. And this morning, of course, live on YouTube and Facebook. So tell your friends, we are talking about war. We're talking about geopolitical upheavals. We're talking about the vexing issues, if you will, affecting us as a people. But the bottom line, I think, is to understand it. And and then to make proper decisions. And I think this is where Professor Hilburn Watson is really assisting us to understand where we are. He is quite capable of doing so. Recalibrating, Professor Watson, is what you said, recalibrating capitalism. Okay.
Yes, recalibrating or restructuring. Either term is more effective, but restructuring are like in conjunction with recalibrating, because you don't restructure without recalibrating. Yes.
What does that mean so all of us can understand?
Okay. So what it means is that systems, economic orders, systems operate in historical time, and they are grounded in a very contradictory sort of framework. And if you don't reorganize, restructure, you can have the system reaching a point of internal crisis where it could collapse. So you want to avoid collapsing. Therefore, you redesign, restructure, reposition, reorganize the operational features of it. That at the base is what restructuring is about, because things don't just last forever in some given state. They run out of steam, they run out of trajectory, they run out of force, run out of power, and you have to get back to basics and reorganize, because change is the driving force of nature. Change is the driving force of human development.
And what does this change entail in terms of what we're looking on? And I'm harking back to that speech and that we discussed on air already, both of us, Mark Carney at Davos. It's uncanny now when you look at the bigger picture and to see that he's the first out of the block to say, oh yes, this is what we've got to do. But he already told us the rules-based system was a fraud. We knew it was a fraud, and we did it anyway because we could do it, so we got away with it. And then I heard yesterday at the United Nations Security Council, the Amir, Iran's representative on the Security Council, I'm not remembering his full name now, and he reminds me so much of the Emperor Haile Selassie in terms of a speech he gave at the League of Nations when the Emperor is giving that speech, but the League of Nations couldn't do anything about it because they had lost power. And now the performance at the United Nations yesterday kind of brought that back to me, and I thought, let us have a conversation about this with Professor Watson, because it seems to me as if this is exactly what Carney was talking about. We know that the rules-based order is totally rubbish and that it's all broken down and so on, and nothing will come out of it. Am I right here? How do you put these two things together?
Okay. So if we go back just briefly to the League of Nations, at the League of Nations meeting, you had the Japanese, Chinese, Ethiopian, a number of other representatives said, we want to include in the plank of the League the end of discrimination based on race. And they said, the Europeans said, we didn't come here to talk about that. They knew they had an imperial order, and in order to maintain their control, they had to keep victimizing, bullying, stealing, looting, killing, raping, whatever they were doing to survive.
Yes.
But anyhow, that moment changed. You had the First World War, you had the period of the Depression, you come up to the late 30s, you come into the Second World War, and after that, with the United Nations system, there was a perception that the UN was there now to bring into the fold, so to speak, all of these people who had lived with imperialism and colonialism. And an interesting book called, by a guy named Mark Mazauer, called No Enchanted Palace. Mazauer was published in 2009, Princeton University Press. And Mazauer argues the UN was not an enchanted palace. It was not there to do for the Africans, the Asians, and others who had been subjected to so much brutality what they wanted. It was to incorporate them into a post-war order. And notice that at the San Francisco conference, again, people from what we would call the Third World were saying, let all core decision-making power rest in the United Nations General Assembly. Yes. And the Americans basically said, no, we have to have a Security Council of powerful forces representing the world. And if we don't have that, we're going to take up our marbles and go home. They knew it had to be another version of the top-down global control order, and that is what we have had. The perception of the UN and the reality of that order, we are living with it. Even immediately following the UN, what do you have? The partitioning of Palestine under European auspices to deprive the Palestinian people of their rights. And we know from other studies that this thing about Israel has been part of a grand myth. A guy named Shlomo San wrote a book called The Invention of the Jewish People, and he contradicts all of these biblical assertions that have been put forward to defend that. We know there are people who embrace that for different reasons. So we have to understand the geopolitics of the world in the particular framework in which it has expressed itself. But in this moment, for the Israeli state in conjunction with the US, the ability of neighboring countries to defend themselves militarily and whatnot is at variance with the aims, right, of the Israelis. And they know that on their own. Consider, Sister Kabu, that every year Israel gets at least $3.5 billion in something called American foreign aid that it doesn't pay back. Nobody else in the world gets that. They can have free health care and free this, but the American taxpayer gets none of that. At home, you have to live with whatever you can. This, though, connects with the U.S. real interest in the region, global domination, hegemony, and control, using the dollar as the global reserve currency, as the currency for denominating oil and so on. And since that part of the world, the Middle Eastern region was a critical site of oil, hydrocarbons. Things have shifted in a number of ways now, but the US has been consistent that if it can control the Middle East the way it wants, then it could target what was the Soviet Union, it could target any other power that might be behaving contradictorily from the vantage point of their interests. So there is an array of issues that come into play that are often not even talked about where these matters, are concerned. The bombing of Iran today is significant at a number of levels. Notice the Israeli position. We must deprive them of their ability to have military self-defense. Now, if these political entities are supposed at least nominally to protect themselves, the Israelis, no, we don't want that. And for them, it has to be violent, bloody, murderous, criminal. And look at Gaza. Gaza becomes the model for the 21st century. This is what you can expect from us if you are not following the rules. And there you have a lot of rhetoric now about Gaza. People want to ban Israel from this organization and that. But Trump the U.S. has put in since Biden 2017 to $30 billion in this enterprise to destroy the Palestinian people on their lands, right? Iran is another episode in this great global madness, this order of the grave that we are living with.
What's the end result? What do you think is the end game for those who are involved in this? Obviously, we talk about Trump, the United States, then Israel. But obviously, there are so many, all of Europe seem to be behind this. Surprisingly enough, I'm not quite sure what's coming from Turkey. We just heard, something very conflicting this morning. But what's the end game, do you think?
But see, the whole thing about an end game, it's a term I don't use really understand what is to be the outcome of where we are. I don't see a clearly defined outcome from this because there is going to be resistance at one level or another. And we have to keep in mind that consider that Israel is a nuclear power. It could never have come anywhere near that without American sponsorship. If you go back to the Kennedy administration, he had some concerns about this Israel and felt that things needed to be done to stop this. Now, there are stories up there about their role, some possible role in the assassination of Kennedy. I cannot speak to that because I don't have detailed information on it. But there's none of this that is not connected through what emerged as a powerful Mossad, Israeli intelligence, with the Central Intelligence Agency. And they work together to produce a lot of the chaos that we are seeing today. I don't see an end game in any definitive sense of the term. Why is it that in the international arena, Israel can have all the nuclear weapons it wants, do all the criminal activity it wants to engage in, and Iran, a large country with almost 100 million people, is not to have nuclear weapons, but Pakistan could, India could. Who's been behind these? What are the motives? Remember when the US bombed Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki around World War II? It was sending a message to the Soviet Union about what you might expect. And when the Chinese Communist Revolution came to power in China, what is now the People's Republic of China in 1949, then they added the thing, and the Chinese were very instrumental in making sure that all of Korea did not fall under American control. So you had the partitioning of Korea. This has been normal. You had the partitioning of Vietnam and so on until the Vietnamese defeated them and had them running across tarmacs on airports and so on to get out. So the end game is always a technical thing. It is always a temporary thing, because since history does not end, there is no end game in any definitive absolute sense.
And I suppose you have said it right. What's the objective then? Let me take a quick break, Prof, and I'll come back. A quick break. On the phone lines, Professor Hilburn Watson, we're talking about the current geopolitical, global geopolitical upheavals, and trying to make sense of them. Professor Watson, thank you so much for staying with us, for coming on, and for taking the time this early in the morning to have this conversation with us. We really appreciate that.
Not a problem.
There is a school of thought, and you know, it's mainly on the social media and some of the YouTube spaces where this entire thing is being referred to as Epstein class war or Epstein's regime war, as if to say that this is a distraction from the Epstein documents by Donald Trump. What's your thinking on that?
Well, it is very interesting. At one point, you hear that Epstein was an Israeli agent. Then you hear he was a Russian agent. And I think that the greater the amount of confusion, then the greater the amount of distraction about what this is about, right? I don't have concrete evidence on his links to Israel or his links to Russia. But sometimes the question becomes, if you had someone like Epstein who was operating with a number of the rich and the powerful from different spaces, what connections might they have been, right? I cannot speak definitively to that. I would be inclined to support an idea that Epstein's death was planned and that there was such more that could be revealed about certain forces that were involved in that way of being, that it was better to bury those. But look at the behavior within the U.S. state through the Department of Justice with this woman named Bondi, who was appointed by Trump. Now you look at her, you look at Noam, who is a very vicious kind of person back there now in the Department of Human Security, and the press secretary at the White House and so on. And you wonder, how is it that you select particular individuals who reflect so much of the negativity of the moment?
There's a deliberateness about it.
Yes, to occupy strategic positions, right, in the state and so on. But all of this is it pertains somewhat to how you try to manage crises that keep rising out of control. And I don't doubt that from some of the photos we've seen that Donald Trump has been a pedophile, that he has engaged in all manner of activities, and that places like the space occupied by Epstein would be appealing to him or attractive to him. He has a history in that particular regard, and the Justice Department has been trying to do as much as it can, in spite of congressional objections, to hide and keep out of the public purview, right? And this is not by accident, in my view, sort of more by design. But for some of this, you know, I don't have the details, but it flows over into the geopolitical sphere, right? And when you have contradictions that do not lend themselves to ready or simple solutions, and they keep resurfacing, you have to have a way to control not only the narrative, but also to shape the behavior of those who are in positions to raise important questions. Every time Bondi appears before a congressional committee, she goes on the offensive. And many of the political forces, whether they are on the Democratic Party side or handful here or there on the Republican side, is always to get themselves trapped, right, by procedural rules and then shy away from addressing the substantive issues that are before us, right? But this continues to unfold, right? And I think it will continue to develop. And hopefully there might be a moment where we learn much more. But the bigger question is, so what do those in positions of power and authority actually do, since these things are not left to the determination of the ordinary voter, except when they go to the polls, and you can never be clear how the conflicting narratives influence the decisions they make when they pull the lever.
Talking about conflicting narratives, so there's also another school of thought, and this is more in the mainstream, where there is a discussion around the dismantling, as you said before, of the old order. So you have to literally decimate this order to be able to bring in this new world economic order that long before Mark Carney, yourself and Bill Robinson have been writing and talking about. Do you see this as more of what is likely, or what is what we are witnessing now, that this is more likely to be it, that this is a dismantling, this is America running scared, understanding that its time is almost over, the dollar is... People talking about de-dollarization. I don't know if BRICS make much sense in this conversation, but that with all of that in place, it seems to me as if there is, not just because of what Mark Carney said, but really because of he laid the groundwork at Davos to say we're going into a new world order, that people are more prepared to welcome whatever is happening here.
Okay. So basically, then what we're talking about here is an old order that is dying and a new order that has not yet fully taken its place as an alternative. This is the so-called interregnum, the moment in between there is tradition, where there is considerable confusion and uncertainty, but that the old is dying and the new is emerging. There is no doubt about that. And this connects not only what I call this crisis of these trillions of dollars floating around the world without investable opportunities, but also something which is critical, Sister Cabo. In the 1970s, when the U.S. automobile industry was beginning to go through tremendous restructuring, you had about 750,000 mass production workers who were producing in the range of 17 million vehicles, buses, cars, trucks, and so on per year. And today you have fewer than 200,000 producing the same number. Why? Because robots, artificial intelligence, and these new so-called brilliant technologies have taken over, rendering vast swaths of humanity irrelevant for the production of commodities. What do you do with what becomes an increasingly uncontrollable, questioning mass of humanity? It is clear that from their point of view, when Trump came in the first term, the first attack was on the Department of Education as we understood the Department of Education. And they were basically saying, without saying it out loud, we don't need all these people. There's no point in educating all of these people. Let us change our priorities and see where it leads. We are at that point today, then we're on a global scale. I recall that within the last 10, 12 years, the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, the UNCTAD, as it's been called, UNCTAD, and the World Bank put out a study in which they concluded that by the year 2050 or thereabout, 50% to 2/3 of all jobs in the so-called global South or Third World could be automated. And yet, by that time, and here in this moment, up to half of the global humanity owns hardly very many in that bottom 50% own basically nothing in the world. They have never been effectively integrated into the production of goods and services in ways that allow them to reproduce the conditions of their existence.
Well, they
And
told us that, sorry to interrupt, but they did tell us a few years ago, 5 or 7 years ago, that in the new economic order, if you will, you will own nothing and you will be happy. This is what came from Klaus Schwab under his tenure at the WEF. By the way, Prof, as an aside, I don't know if you realize that so Schwab's was overrun with scandal, and so he had to step down. And then Borgia, what his name is, along with Fink, are the two that took over. But I don't know if you recognize that Borgia has stepped down because
yes. You see here, these are largely unmanageable issues from the angle of the strategic ways in which they have tried to manage the world, right? And they understand this in some ways, but they understand this from what I call the top-down forms of control, not from the needs of the broad mass of humanity, right? Now, with about 70 human beings estimated to own more than half of the wealth of the world. And in the United States, you have a handful who control 80 to 85% of Americans live on about 15 to 20% max of what is there, while the other 20% control over 85%. This is not sustainable. Right? There are those who have claimed that the liberal international order, this is the so-called rules-based order, has failed and we need an alternative. The alternative they have in mind in this chaotic situation is really fascism. Not something based on some principles of international rules and democracy and progress. They're saying we are beyond that. There's a South African guy named Peter Thiel, one of the founders of this company called Palantir, that does a lot of intelligence work for the United States and the Israelis. And he has basically said, yes, when we're looking for terrorists or Hamas, this or that, and we don't get what we want and we have to blow up a place and some Palestinian women and babies get killed, said that's just the way it is. That's the way the world is. Now, that is from the angle of the most violent, but that most violent is also among the wealthiest forces in the world. They are not sugarcoating anything. They are saying to us, this is what it is. If you have got a growing surplus humanity, in a world where profitability decreases for a whole set of reasons, what do you do with this surplus humanity, right?
Explain to our listeners when you say that the next order, if you will, is fascism. What is that? What does that look like? And what are we seeing of it already?
Okay, so here let's do a bit of historical review. The 1930s or so, that the Nazis come in to power in Germany under tremendously stressful conditions. The Germans had tried to retrace the trajectory of British imperialism in World War I, and they were sort of checkmated. And then the indemnification process was set in, where the Germans were required to pay indemnities in conditions where they themselves did not have the means. And the Nazi forces came up and said, you are a great people, we are Aryan people, we are being stepped upon by these forces around us, and we have to bring the forces together and fight against them. And the Nazi symbol emerges, and in that way they call it something called National Socialism, but it had nothing to do with any socialism. The whole international communist project was workers of the world unite. The Nazi project is, no, Germans, you are a special people. You're not uniting with others for that. The aim is to control and to dominate. And let's bring together through the fascists the bonds that unite the German people to the exclusion of others, right? The so-called fascists. And in this particular regard, then, this new doctrine has its appeal in Germany. It has its appeal in Italy with Benito Mussolini. It has its appeal in Spain with Franco. And it also has its appeal in places like Japan. When crises reach a stage where things cannot be held as they have normally been held together, then there is a fallout that gets beyond the expectations and even what some might see as the predictability. But this was to be part of what the Germans saw as a top-down global control order, and they then set themselves up in various parts of the world, right, to colonialism, through imperialist projects. But one of the things that people have hardly talked about, Sister Kabu, is the following: that on the face of Africa and Namibia and other areas and other places around the world, they put in place the foundations for fascism through genocide. Look at what happened in what used to be called Southwest Africa, today in Namibia, where the Germans cordoned off 100,000 of the Herero and the Namba people in a space where it was extremely brutally hot by the day and very cold at night, and cordoned them off and largely left them to die. And one of the German leaders said, and their shrieks could be heard in the sublime silence of the night, and the Herero were no more. It was deliberate and intentional genocide. And Aimé Césaire, in his work on the dying colonialism, addresses this issue that no, you don't start in Europe. You start in Africa, you start in the colonies to get a clear sense of how the preconditions for fascism that came home in the final solution in Europe, how those conditions were laid, right? So we have to begin with this as an international form. The economic basis of fascism as ideology and practice is capitalism. I insist that liberalism, capitalism, imperialism, fascism share a lot in common, and Zionism.
All right, that is quite a mouthful, and that helps us to segue into our own particular situation. You mentioned the continent of Africa, of course, but also the African diaspora, including the Caribbean, and that will also take us into Cuba. Because now we're seeing a situation in Africa and in the Caribbean where African governments, and let me talk specifically for Caribbean governments, there's so much fear in the Caribbean just to disagree right now with the system that is being rolled out, to disagree with Donald Trump or Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio is probably more feared in the Caribbean than Donald Trump is, to tell you the truth. So we have this high level of fear, and to the point where Caribbean people and Caribbean leaders would prefer to remain silent than to speak out against genocide in Cuba or genocide in Haiti, and specifically about this acute genocide that we're seeing now in Cuba. Why do you think this is so? Why is there so much fear?
Okay, so you look at what the U.S. did in Venezuela. You look at the thesis, a common thesis for decades about the Caribbean as a zone of peace, not a site of war and conflict. But in making determinations about any of that, it is not what the small islands of the Caribbean, say. It is how the power dynamics reveal themselves. Now, let me just say here that I do not consider Marco Rubio to be a smart, intellectually sophisticated person. He's sort of like a trudger, and he takes orders and so on, and he is sent down to the region to meet in St. Kitts or here, there, wherever, to talk to Caribbean people. We know that the record of Cuba has been stellar. They try to nasty this by talking about Cuba engaging in all kinds of nefarious activities. No, in war, in hurricanes, in whatever, the Cubans have always been there to support. But now that Cuba is being isolated again by this force from the north, right? And I'm reminded of a statement that the late revolutionary leader of Cuba, Fidel Castro, used. He said, "They choke us and then blame us for how we breathe." Very powerful metaphor, right? They choke us. And we see it today. It's deliberate and it's intentional. We know from records that Marco Rubio's people left Cuba in 1956 before the Cuban Revolution came to power, and they were not from the wealthy elite. They were in Florida from the middle of the 1950s, but he talks about the brutality of the communist regime and all the harm it did to his family. He is a liar in this particular regard. But sometimes these apparent tidbits are important for us to bring in. Now, the Cuban Revolution came to power, and when it did, it nationalized property. It had every right to do it, but the U.S. position under the State Department under John Foster Dulles at the time was that it was illegal and totally, absolutely, unendingly unacceptable to nationalize property. Well, capitalism is an international form of production, and if states take the steps to take control of their resources to transform the conditions to improve the lot of the masses of the people, then they become an enemy of this international order. Don't forget that the precursor in Central America was Guatemala under Arbenz. When he told the U.S., no, we need to transform land, take land that is not in use and make it available to ordinary people so they have a chance. And they overthrew his government, killed massive numbers of people in Guatemala. This was through the instrument of the CIA. So they have been on the rampage all along. I want to keep broadening the context, sister, for making sense of where we are today. In 1946, when the post-war order was being restructured, they established what was called what came to be called the Rio Treaty in Latin America. And the U.S. brought together all the leaders of Latin America at a place called Punta del Este in Uruguay, and to tell them that the number one threat to the world and Latin America was the Soviet Union and communism. And the leaders all to one said, no, that's not our problem. It is hunger, poverty, destitution. We need to address the needs of the broad masses of the excluded people. And the U.S. said at Punta del Este, we did not come here to talk about all your preoccupations with poverty and whatnot. If we get into that, we will lose sight of the number one problem, which is a strategic geopolitical problem, the threat from the Soviet Union, which did not exist. The Soviet Union having lost 27 million people in World War II, struggling to restructure, no global presence in any real sense, but the logic of the State Department was that it was communism, anti-communism. Where are we today in the region? Cuba became a beacon fighting against dehumanization under the Batista regime, where Cuba was nothing but a whorehouse for American capitalists, bankers, financiers, and others. And the Cubans said, no, this comes to an end. And they've been choking Cuba from then to this point. Cuba has faced major challenges. A lot of the infrastructure is in bad shape. The sugar industry, which would have been something like a beacon in the 60s and so on, is no longer the case on the world stage, sister. You go into a restaurant and on your table are every substitute for cane sugar. Every substitute for cane sugar. And then the agricultural sector in Cuba has suffered. But the Cubans moved into modern technology. They have been able to use this to support much of the work they do of a social medical nature in various parts of the world. But again, these are not industries that produce millions and millions of jobs. These are based upon the most complex modern technologies where you do tremendously good work, but you still have to try to absorb the broad masses, of the people. And let me say one last point there. The infrastructure in Cuba, a lot of it is in bad shape. They understand that. They have continued to try to drive Cuba out of existence. And even with oil, the Russians recently said that they had put 250 to 300,000 barrels of oil on a ship bound for Cuba, and they came up publicly and said, if the U.S. tries through its naval forces to intercept this ship to prevent it from reaching its destination, they will consider that to be a hostile act. So the U.S. is leaving nothing out of focus. Cuba can't get oil from Venezuela, but it is reported that they're shipping the oil to Israel.
They are. And we heard President Trump saying just 2 days ago that he's contemplating a friendly takeover, his words, of Cuba.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, your thoughts on that, because that was widely reported on as if it really meant something.
Well, on the one, you get a lot of bluster out of Trump. He also was going to do a friendly takeover of Venezuela wherever they go. It would be a friendly takeover. Listen, he is saying now, minute by minute, that the Iranian people need to come out and take over their
We're
country.
hearing, yes,
Right?
yes.
So this is part of the bluster that comes from Trump, and it is not normally informed by anything of substance, but it has a sense of purpose to the naked eye, the ear, when it's coming from the United States of America. But they are not in a position to do any of these things. It takes attention away from the manifestations of the global crisis of American hegemony. It's not coming from one point versus some other point. It connects because the order set itself up to be, in our moment, global in its focus. I don't take him seriously on that. Now, that notion of a takeover is about, quote, regime change. They want the regimes that will do what their bidding is, whether it is in Venezuela, in Cuba, in Iran, or wherever it might be. But we have to be able to draw lines. We can't be absolutely clear about anything and make sense of the differences between the rhetoric and the actual process. But the American order has been grounded in sowing chaos wherever it has gone in the world, with the flag and with the anthem and the flag, singing and disconnecting people from the real issues that they face. And this is the chaotic nature of global capitalism.
Let me take a quick break, Prof, as we go into our final segment or penultimate segment when we come back. We're back with you inside of the Africa Forum. This is Running African. It seems as if there's war all around us. We are speaking with Professor Hilburn Watson. This is his forte. This is his specialty. Professor, thank you so much once again. Here's the thing. Is there a threat, or are we already in World War III?
Well, here's the thing. My thinking for a long time has been, if a third world war breaks out, what form might that take? I have read over the years that a third world war would be the final war because it would be a nuclear war. And the destructiveness would be so pervasive and endemic that reorganizing human life as we have known it might be impossible. Right? Mm-hmm. No, it hasn't hit us in that particular form, but you notice that the conditions we are seeing now in the Middle East could accelerate into something radically different than what it is. But with Israel as an extension of the United States in this regard, armed to the teeth with nuclear weapons, just as the US has said it will never deny that it would use nuclear weapons in the first strike, the Israelis are just hoping that there would be a condition where they could detonate one or two in some area. But the consequences of that would be really, almost unimaginable, because it would not be ending. The Russians don't have the capability to deploy massive, you take the Gerald Ford that the US put right there in the Caribbean off Venezuela, a monster. That was not set up for any self-defense. That is set up for some of the most aggressive kind of conduct to be deployed in any part of the world if where the circumstances merit.
It is now off the coast of Israel.
Yes, right. But keep in mind, sister, that we also face something here, the conundrum of capitalism being the number one obstacle to its own expansion. When you construct the Gerald Ford is not something you convert tomorrow into a hospital or several hospitals. You have these for military purposes, which are offensive and destructive. And once you have put the trillions of dollars into putting these things in place, you suffer the consequences. This thing about capitalism, not as the barrier to its own expansion, reminds us of some of these things that we are seeing at this particular moment, where the needs of humanity are radically different from this militarism that that we see. And for the United States, it is top-down control on a global level. It's not about global uplift. It has never been about that in any strategic sense of the term, though the rhetoric has been, very common. So we have to monitor these processes and keep an open mind on them about where we go. But endless wars, a country, sister, with a $35 trillion national debt that requires $1 trillion a year just to pay the interest of the debt is not sustainable. It cannot be sustained in the United States. So you go around the world, you bomb here, you do this, you have several unending wars all over the place, and that is costly from the point of view of the imperatives of humanity to survive in a world where and more people are being rendered surplus for the direct production of goods and services, right? Those are among the issues I think that should be attracting our critical attention.
What is China's role in all of this? I know many were disappointed, expected more of China in Venezuela. For those who were looking closely, we knew that that wouldn't have happened. And now there are still conversations around what will China do in Iran, if anything. There are even conversations about Russia, which we feel very unlikely.
Okay.
What will China do, do you think?
So here we know that China is dependent on access to hydrocarbons from different parts of the world. That is a vulnerability. Part of the U.S. strategy is to choke China. This reflects the fact that rather than facilitating greater interdependence on a global scale, their thing is total domination. The Chinese, the question has been posed, what has China done? Loans to Venezuela on a global scale around the so-called Belt and Road Project, over $150 billion in loans and investments in various places. That could contribute to improving infrastructure. I don't get distracted by the rhetoric that China is just some other imperialist country. I have argued and have had conversations with friends over years, Mr. Cabo, that if tomorrow morning the Venezuelans, all of the countries in Latin America and Africa were to say, we are not paying the Chinese back 1 penny for any loans that we have received from them. China doesn't have navies and air forces and marines and so on to send in to do this, to stop whatever. So I would argue that from the angle of the top-down control, any attack such as what I have described that might occur against, could have conceivably occur against China and say in Latin America, the impact would be so vast that American interests would also be under severe threat, if you will. And they might be ready to say, hell, let's try to help the Chinese because at the end of the day, these are ruling orders in the world. So I would like to suggest there, China has done a lot around Venezuela, but notice what the Chinese have said. We are going the route of international law. We are entitled to what we are entitled to out of these arrangements. We can't put torpedoes. We can't put Marines, we can't put military forces to get what it is that is owed to us. So the Chinese would fall under the rubric of what some would call so-called soft power. And they have set in place arrangements from Africa to Latin America where you build up infrastructure so that capacity building for absorbing resources and improving the broad conditions for the masses, that's much more likely than under the American order, because under the American order, it is the profitability for private capital that rules first and last. Right.
Is China's soft power more looking like settler colonialism?
Well, here's the thing. No, I would not agree with that by definition. Settler colonialism is a different thing. The fundamental history of settler colonialism has been bound up with genocide. That is one of the fundamental features of it. In the first 100 years in the Western Hemisphere of Europeans, 100 million people were destroyed, lives were destroyed, whether directly through aggression, expulsion, and deliberate killing, or through diseases and other practices, other forces, right? So no, the thing is this: when we use the logic of settler colonialism, we argue in a linear, one-dimensional way. This is what the Europeans did, and this is what the Chinese are doing. The Chinese are managing a capitalist, a state-centered capitalist order. Now, that tells us something. All of those are not created equal, so to speak. I have never said that the Chinese are, goddesses and the Chinese are there just for altruism and what have you. But my argument is that the Chinese seek to benefit from these arrangements, even when they require large numbers of Chinese workers to these points where they set up these projects, these loan arrangements with governments on a long-term basis. If you are able to make them work and you can expand production and accumulation at home, you can pay back your loans. Right? They're not the most burdensome, but they're never like, pay me back 500 million in 2 years or 5 years over a period of time. And this is what they have been projecting through the Belt and Road Project, right? And so on. So we are dealing with a different set of circumstances and not settler colonialism in the sense in which we have known it historically.
And I want to have a conversation with you because this has always been my thesis, if you will, from before China entered the Caribbean and we saw what they were doing on the continent of Africa. If we have to say neo-settler colonialism, but there's something about it that is insidious, especially when you look in Ghana and when you look even here in Jamaica. But I think this is a conversation for another time. In terms of the wider question we'd asked before about World War III and whether or not we're in it, and where does China stand as an imperial power on the outside or on the inside? If we're to look ahead, and I'm going to ask you to look well, you are well placed to look in this mirror, Prof, to see where we are, if you will, and where China stands, because the biblical prophecy, if I'm to quote from my father, is that the next power is China, the next global power, the next imperial power is China, and everything points to that. I know I'm going to get a lot of calls on this and a lot of letters on this about Christianity and so on, but it is what it is. Do you see China emerging on the backside of this as the imperial power?
Okay, let me put it this way. I think that when our logic, our mode of reasoning, analysis, and interpretation is informed strictly by the historical practices shaped, implemented, imposed with bludgeons on the world, then the tendency is to see things in a linear way. I don't necessarily subscribe to that argument, but I will tell you this, that the potential of China is a potentiality rising and developing. The American order, organized globally, has reached its apogee, so to speak. And it is in crisis. Now, crisis requires restructuring, as I said, to prevent things from going into a state of atrophy, right? And the idea that China becomes a replacement for the United States and would be the same kind of power. Look at the United States. It has consistently throughout its rule, dominance after the Second World War, used militarization to gird it. We have today in the range of 750 to 800 military bases owned and operated by the United States in 140 something countries. Where do you see any of that on China's part? I think the Chinese would be in the much better position to make sure that they are not trying to repeat the trajectory of American hegemony in the post-war period. The Soviets get caught seeking to compete with them in ways that weren't largely beneficial. In Africa, in the national liberation wars of national liberation, the Soviets had spent up to 15 to 20 billion dollars helping this regime, that regime. And when the Soviet Union collapsed and the literature was coming out of Progress Publishers and Novosti Publishing House and Nauka Publishing House, I used to follow that literature a lot when I was teaching at Howard University. And the Soviets said, what do we have to show? We cannot point to one regime any place in Africa today that has consolidated socialism or revolutionary socialism in a way that protects it from internal or external strategies to domination. And they said, well, this is a lesson we have learned. You have to come back to the ground and look at the concrete, right? Then Mahmoud Mamdan, the father of Zoran Mamdan, who is the mayor of New York City today. He published a book called Citizen and Subject, and it was focused on Southern Africa, South Africa. And in that book, he said, Africans had never known themselves to be tribal until Europeans came in and imposed that. And you can hardly go on social media today, Sister Kabu, and find any African who expresses himself on these fronts who is not still mentally tribal. And yet it was not their reality. It was not their reality. So how do people internalize the ideas of ruling forces on a global scale that influence their own self-concepts, right? I am suggesting through all of this what seems very circuitous to argue that I don't see China becoming this global empire. You don't do that simply by making loans and building infrastructural projects from Latin America, a plan to build a highway from Brazil on the eastern side of the southern Atlantic to the Pacific and link up with other countries. But just you do that to facilitate change and accelerate the pace of change that could be beneficial for the countries involved. But China doesn't have military bases around the world. How do they become the global empire and don't have things? Are they going to put $200 trillion in militarism in Latin America and Africa to do what? Compete with the United States? They are doing a pretty darn good job right now, driving all kind of fear into the thinking of the Americans, and they don't have military bases anywhere. And those that have are catching hell to maintain an order that is in a state of almost permanent decay.
Considering the new AI or algorithmic order, if you will, does this make a difference in terms of whether we fight wars in short order with these massive equipment and boots on the ground, or we use technology, and the extent to which a country has developed that technology, then what does that mean?
Okay, so that's a very good point. I remember a book written by a woman named Susanna Zuboff, who was a business economist at Harvard University. The book is called Surveillance Capitalism. And that brings us back to things like digitalization. We've had a number of other studies, and we are at a point today, whether it is in warfare or in the regular sort of business-oriented restructuring, where in fact we have a decrease in need for massive amounts of human labor. In Iraq, it was known that much of what was being done by the U.S. Navy in pummeling Iraq was being supervised from Indiana and Midwestern states, from massive complex techno-industrial projects they had. It wasn't being done from the base of the ships in the sea. So we've gone through radical changes already, and they will continue. The new face of warfare is not 100,000 troops on the ground. If you can reduce the number of casualties on the body bags that you come home, where then your lethality, your ability to be lethal and brutal and destructive intensifies or increases, and you use technology to that end, that is the new face of the warfare that we will be seeing in the world, right? I don't think there is any doubt about that. And since that does not require massive numbers of boots on the ground, so to speak. Then, when it comes to the question of meeting human needs, right? Capitalism is not organized to meet socially determined needs. If it were, you wouldn't have a strategy by the US to block China from access to oil from Venezuela or to prevent Cuba from getting the resources it needs through. It didn't go out and say we want to be left on the dump heap of history. This is a part of an international order of global capitalism that cannot meet human needs and leave more and more of us, in a state of deterioration and decay, while wealth builds up in the hands of a few at the top.
Because we're watching now, to your point, a little reported on war or conflict, if you will, in the United States with Anthropic and Elon Musk's XAI and Pete Hegseth's determination that America must have the capability of whatever AI lab to have massive surveillance of societies, and also weapons, military weapons that do not need human guidance. And this is what this is all about. And it seems as if to me, and you can tell me what you think about this, Prof, but it seems as if that this is an organic war, but it is not, because when you see the same day that the US and Israel bombs Iran is the same day that the announcement is made in the United States that XAI will be doing what Anthropic was being asked to do. This is Elon Musk, and you talked about Peter Thiel before. So in the wider scheme of things, what does this mean? Because it seems to me as if where we're going is wherever technology is the warfare.
Yes. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Prof.
Yes. Well, see, yes. I mean, you have raised an extremely important point there. Yes. The new technologies, as the term has been used, that is at the center of everything. That's the driving force, so to speak. And for warfare, I remember under Clinton when they began restructuring the military and drawing down on large numbers of the bases spread out across the country. The argument was, what is this going to imply for the military, the numbers of recruits and so on? They have streamlined these processes. Just as if you go into an auto assembly plant, you see robots doing most of the work and humans are just assisting the robots, so to speak. In the military sphere, more and more of that is being done. As I mentioned earlier, it reduces the number of body bags. It reduces the fear and the anger of parents losing their 19-year-olds and 20-year-olds on battlefields, right? But this new order is also so much more pernicious and destructive ecologically, technologically, and from the angle of the impact on societies. When destructiveness becomes, through the use of these new military technologies, becomes the norm, and they explode ammunition, those areas become unable or incapable of sustaining life by growing crops and so on in those places. So this is very anti-human at large, but this is the new base of the techno-industrial innovation in military warfare. Lethality, criminality, brutality, destructiveness, this is what the humans face, and we are not, as human beings, set up to accommodate those things, right? But this order cannot help itself because that is what it is driven by. Fewer hands and more lethality, fewer hands and more destructiveness, fewer hands and side effects that will last for generations. We noticed what they did in Vietnam with napalm and what have you, the hardships that have been imposed on millions of women around for matters of childbirth and so on. You don't hear them talk about those things. This is just part of the side effects. And this will be, in my view, much more destructive, much more pernicious, and much more by design brutal.
Yes. What lessons we have? 5 minutes, Prof. I'm going to give this 5 minutes to you to say what lessons can we learn from history, Africa and its diaspora, Africa, the Caribbean, Latin America. What lessons do we learn from history, and how do we move from here? If you were to say,
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big one. Yeah. So we are in the contradictoriness is clear. We are in an increasingly interconnected world, right? Last night I was reading a piece on Facebook where the head of Botswana has said that he was invited by the Trump or his government, by the Trump administration, to come to Washington to discuss minerals.
yes,
And he said, we are not going to Washington. The time has come for them to come to us and negotiate because we have the minerals. And you say, fantastic. But I would assure you, Sister Kabu, that the United States could put together in 5 minutes a larger number of people with expertise about these minerals than Botswana could put together in a year. So whether they hold the meeting in Botswana or in Washington, the power relations remain fundamental, right? Now, I'm not saying that this is not a statement, a gesture that sounds very impressive, because 20 years ago, 10 years ago, the delegation for Botswana would pack up its stuff, put them in their briefcases and get on a plane and go to Washington and sit in a room where the terms of discussion leave them dumbfounded because they don't even have the expertise about their resources, right? The power dynamics, that's what we have to look at. And I say kudos to the head of Botswana. And then I put a post on Facebook saying, when they asked, will this make a big difference? And I began with the word hardly. But we have to be able to restructure, reconfigure, redesign the framework, to make sense. And for the diaspora, yes, important, and things are changing in Africa. Trump is putting emphasis on health-related projects as a way of reinforcing forms of control. Even Burkina Faso is said to be entering into an agreement on the health system.
This is a very good segue, because my next guest is going to be talking exactly about that, because we see this as part of the expansion of warfare. So
part of it is that there is no that warfare has a different character and even perhaps a different name in this moment.
Yes. Prime Minister Andrew Holness we've been calling on him to say something at least and to do something about Cuba. And at the CARICOM Heads of Government meeting in St. Kitts and Nevis, he made a statement calling for solidarity. It was a very wishy-washy statement. We know that he's afraid. But he made a statement nonetheless. Kamala Prasad Besesa came after, and her statement was blistering, if you will. Kamala and Guyana, Trinidad and Guyana, have been invited to the table by the United States as a result of their support of the U.S. I want to think that the Dominican Republic will be there too, but we didn't hear that name. Yes. But the Senator Jimenez has come out swinging, saying that the Jamaican Prime Minister had no right, and, well, more or less him just call him a rude little boy in a short pants, and wait, we are going to, and this is me paraphrasing, and Jamaica will pay the price. You're going to feel the consequences. This is the response, from a U.S. senator to a sovereign nation who has an opinion about another sovereign nation that has been its benefactor, if you will, and its help for decades.
Yeah, I mean, the Cubans did a tremendous amount for the Caribbean. There's no doubt. And they are also saying out of the CARICOM context that they want to contribute as much as they can on a humanitarian basis, to Cuba. And that is all good. The thing is to get the stuff in there where they can. But they are nervous. They are afraid. They will talk about sovereignty. But remember, Sister Kabu, as we close, you go back to the Monroe Doctrine, 1823, where the Americans said that Latin American republics have to call them first and get approval for how they might use their sovereign power, that it is not up to them. It was Thomas Jefferson who said, we are too weak at this early moment to do anything, but just wait until we get our power dynamics in place. We are going to pluck every Latin American republic one by one. And they use some of the most gruesome, brutal means to try to do that, right? So sovereignty expresses a power relation. It is not a thing. And we have to understand the interconnectedness of the world to make sense of sovereignty, but it is not equality, only in a nominal sense. It's the power dynamics that shape how that is exercised. But if you insist on the principle of sovereignty as a point of departure for respecting the rights of countries in the global environment, I think it is a useful technique to use, but don't objectify it.
Very well said, and a good way to leave this. Obviously, we're going to have to continue this conversation as usual, Professor Watson. So much food for thought that you've given us, and especially that very last sentence you made in terms of where do we go from here.
Thank you, sister.
Thank you so much, my brother, Professor Hilbert Watson, and we see you soon.
Bye.
So that's Professor Watson. He's been on from 6:30, taking us through the where we are now. And believe me, we are in a place of, we can say confusion and be good with it, because so many I know are totally confused right now as to just watching what is happening around us and trying to figure out where do I fit into all of this. I hope we helped. Let me take a quick break. We're inside of the Africa Forum. This is Running African. We are joined in studio now by my next very special guest. It's a family affair this morning, it looks like. But Dr. Arthur Green is in the house. And while Peter helped us to get everything in focus, let me tell you the book that I am reading now, and that we have put on the Running African Book Club. The Geoengineered Transhuman, the Hidden Technologies of HARP, Chemtrails, 5G, 6G, Nanotechnology, Synthetic Biology, and the Scientific Effort to Transform Humanity. Can I hold it up, Peter? Are you able to see it? All right, so it's a Geoengineered Transhuman. That's the title of the book. The Hidden Technologies of HARP, Chemtrails, 5G, 6G, Nanotechnology, Synthetic Biology, and the Scientific Effort to Transform Humanity by Elena Freeland. So we'll hold it up for you as soon as we're back on camera. But let me just welcome to the space Dr. Arthur Green, medical doctor, African-centered, and who has been watching very, very closely the events that we have been talking about all morning, watch them unfold, but also has been looking at other issues. And we're going to go from where. Welcome, Dr. Green. Oh, you're going to be doing this with your mask on? I don't know if the studio is quite all right. You don't have to use a mask. But then if you want to, that's fine. You can keep it on. You can keep on your mask, because I don't want anything to happen. And then I told you to take off your mask. So if you're doing it with a mask on, it is fine. So welcome to the program.
Thank you.
All right. So we just heard, segueing from the conversation with Professor Hilbert Watson, as we look towards where do we go from here, and power dynamics and so on. He actually mentioned the America First health strategy, which is something that we had planned to talk about this morning. You've been looking at the America First health strategy. What is it?
Well, the America First global health strategy is really an avenue or agency that came about under the Trump administration, really to, in some ways, replace the WHO. And at its core, it plans to deal with countries on a bilateral basis. So this is against the backdrop that the US withdrew from the WHO, the World Health Organization, in January of this year. And of course, Trump has been citing, their closeness with China as one of the causes, and also their mishandling of the COVID-19 pandemic. So, on the back of that, they also dismantled the USAID, Agency for International Development, which the fundings were withdrawn on the grounds that this organization was not profitable, they were really losing money, and that at the core of it, their audit, if you will, would have shown them that these NGOs and other agencies that misused the funds were not necessarily benefiting the local health services. They were not profitable. And this was the grounds on which they decided to reorganize and restructure these things.
So at the end of the day, it has this new name, America First Global Health Strategy, but you see it as a replacement
for the WHO
and USAID.
Right, right, definitely, because they would view the WHO, the World Health Organization, as being a multilateralist organization. So what this approach now affords them, the direct approach, where it's a bilateral agreement. So in other words, they will deal with individual countries on an individual basis. And whether it's funding or whether it's support or provision of testing agents or frontline agents, or
this is kind of this has a sinister feel to it. What's your thinking?
Well, it's interesting because it says America first, so you can see the same MAGA principle or the MAHA principle, the Make America Great Again, and they didn't hide that. They're saying the main pillars of this initiative or this strategy is making America safer, stronger, and more prosperous.
So America First is foregrounded,
right?
And I noticed that they are not so much in the Caribbean. Well, Panama, I think, is an outlier.
Mentioned. Yes.
But as Professor Watson said just now,
right?
And he says, surprisingly enough, Burkina Faso,
right,
has somehow, whether it's initially or otherwise, but signed on to this.
Right. Well, what is interesting with this, the signing on or the engagement of individual countries is not necessarily at a government-to-government level in many cases. So they are using
I think we're not hearing you too well if you're speaking America for yes.
Yeah, it is not necessarily at a government-to-government level in all cases. In some instances, what they have done is to use what they call the faith-based organizations, so whether it's the churches or other NGOs, as a direct engaging partner. And so
this is all, you're seeing Burkina Faso, you've been looking at this, so you're saying Burkina Faso did not go directly or is not directly engaging at the moment, but through another agency or another agent?
It is possible that other agencies serve as intermediaries in the transaction.
Right.
But at the end of the day, what they are really doing is they are saying, we will fund you, we will support you with the infrastructure, drugs, etc., the capability for doing surveillance of especially, transmissible infective diseases. But they came out straight. What they're saying, we will assist you with, for example, hardware or with cash in some cases. But the bottom line is, it is in order for us to keep Americans safe in your country and also to prevent them from carrying diseases from your country back to us. So it's about our safety first, America's safety first. Our citizens must be safe where they are in your country, and we don't want them to bring back any germs or microbes from those countries to cross our borders.
So the countries who have refused or initially signed on and probably were at the space that Burkina Faso is now, which is to say looking over this to make a final decision. Zimbabwe is one, and I think Zambia is another, but they refused to sign the final document, to sign off on this. And do you know the reason why?
Well, not clearly, but I would hazard a guess it probably has to do with the fine tune, because they had three pillars on which they rest their case is to make America safer and stronger. And when they talk about making it stronger, these means that they will provide the means for surveillance capabilities. But in the negotiation itself of accessing funds and the setting up of these infrastructure, there are other nuances which the Americans will use to leverage with the governments as to how they will deal with China. So here it comes up again. They're going to say, we will give you ABC, but you will now have to give us preferential treatment. So they're finding a way to use this
So the way they're negotiating with Zambia or Zimbabwe is not necessarily the same kind of negotiations they're having with Burkina Faso.
That's right.
Is what I hear you saying. Because Zimbabwe has come out really strong to say at the end of the day, we have to send them our pathogens. We have to send them our data.
Yes.
And what does that mean for our sovereignty?
Well, that is very salient point. Yeah, because the exchange of information and control of it will put them on the back foot. So America, of course, has this leverage over these countries on a bilateral basis where you will commit to, for example, a 5-year agreement, and during that period, you will be confined to stay in the bounds of minimizing your interactions of assistance from China. So then again, we see that in the midst of this, just as the reason was quoted for withdrawing from the WHO, these new initiative, this new global health strategy, if you will, the substitute for the WHO, is now determining that you will have to preferentially side with us as with China. Right. So that leverage is included in this agreement.
Well, let us see what happens, when Burkina Faso, because I think they're at the first stage, look at this and to say, even though if you go to the DOJ or the White House website, you'll see a lot of information on America First Global Health Strategy. I think we should have a look at it because I think for Africa and obviously some parts of South America already or Central America, and I think later on, let's see what's going to happen with the Caribbean. I think maybe the Caribbean, there are some things in place already. Like, is PAHO part of WHO or PAHO would be more
in
part
some
of
sense
the
it's
kind of
regional.
situation?
It's a regional representation of what the WHO is.
So I suppose if they can take control of the PAHO machinery, then they probably wouldn't have to, and that could fit into the America First Global Health Strategy.
Right, because to be frank, the long-term goal of this strategy is to really sideline and be independent of the World Health Organization. So far, they have a total of just 60 countries, but they are going country by country and engaging them. So
it's to destroy agencies like the WHO. Obviously, we see the same thing with the United Nations, with the Council of, what's the thing in Gaza called? The Council of Peace? What's it called again? The Board of Peace.
Yes.
So everything is being dismantled but replaced neatly.
Right, and replaced in a way where the preeminent posturing and position is the US. Yes. So
and this is why we say this is warfare just the same. It is
right, and interestingly enough, it's always juxtaposed against China's position. China's approach being more a loans approach and infrastructural, development.
As Puff was saying just now, too. I mean, I think that's a pretty good point to make. The Defense Production Act?
Well, this is an interesting one. This came about in February. And so basically, it was an executive order under the Trump administration, really, to say that
Speak in the microphone.
As far as it goes, elemental phosphorus is very critical for us. And so he's putting a trust on conservation and increased domestic production of elemental phosphorus for its use in glyphosate, and that, as you know, is one of the main ingredients in, for example, the herbicides like Roundup, for example.
This means that this has a lot of meaning for me, because
yes.
and I'm sure you too, because we have had so many protest marches, so many meetings and just activism and advocacy against Roundup, for example, which is glyphosate,
Yes.
and you know, talking about the need to preserve our seed, talking about food security, all of this, and this we've been doing from the 90s, only to find now that the whole thing has been flipped on its head. I'm gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, talk us through it, help us to understand what has happened here and what does this mean. But let me take a quick break.
Jamaica, the national budget is here and it affects you, your family, your future, your community. It's all connected. Now is the time to get informed and get involved. What's new? What's changing? And how will it impact your daily life? On Tuesday, March 10, the Honorable Upheaval Williams, Minister of Finance and the Public Service, presents the 2026-27 Central Government Budget. The national budget is everybody's business. Visit mof.gov.jm for more details.
Akipod Restaurant and Bar presents Raw Soul Sunday each and every Sunday at Akipod Restaurant and Bar, 61 King Street, Lindsay, St. Catherine. Special guest DJs each week. Admission free. Come out and be entertained with love. Must be 18 or older to drink. Drink responsibly. ID required.
Where do you go? Don't you need my love, baby? Why can't you come on and let us play?
From the creators of Money Fridays, we introduce to you another radio first. Grab back.
Stay locked into Irie FM on the 107 this and every Monday in the wake up call for Grab Bag, and you could win up to $50,000 cash weekly plus other prizes.
All you have to do is call Irie FM when you hear it's Grab Bag time. Tell the announcer which bag to dip into, and what comes up is yours, just like that.
It could be a gift from a sponsor. It could be $10,000. It could be $30,000. It could be a whopping $50,000. Or it could be, sorry, try again.
But if you don't have a representing hand in the bag, you don't have a chance.
Grab Bag is brought to you courtesy of
Childs R Us Limited, Banners Valley, St. Elizabeth. For Childs, tools, every household fixture. Call 965-1896. Childs R Us.
All right, we're back with you inside of the Africa Forum. This is Running African, and it is 16 minutes after 8 o'clock. My very special guest in studio is medical doctor, Dr. Arthur Green, and we're looking at new developments that might have passed us by because we're so focused on what else is happening in the world, but it's all connected. America First Global Health Strategy is directly connected into everything else that is being rolled out. Even though it appears chaotic, there is serious strategy to the madness. Just a question came in now to ask, just before we continue with the Defense Production Act, is if those countries that are signing up, if it's by invitation or any country can indicate their interest to sign up. Do we know?
Well, it's possibly both by solicitation. It could be by solicitation.
Yes.
Or by, on either parties, yes, trying to benefit from this process.
Yeah, it seems to be going full speed ahead. That is what we're sure of. And I was just trying to find the countries, the African countries that are already signed up, and they're quite a few. Do you have a list?
Nigeria, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Uganda has been on the list. Kenya, those are on the list.
Eswatini,
yes.
Ethiopia.
Right.
There's a lot happening there. I suppose we'll find a list in a little while. But also, let's go back to the Defense Production Act, which this is a new thing that was just signed
in February of this year.
All right. Tell us what this is. And I contextualize it just now to remind people that when we talk about food security, one of the main issues is Roundup and glyphosate, and what this does to the to the soil and the fact that you're no longer able to regrow your seeds, for example. This is food war now. This is a food war, as Rastakura would say. This is definitely a food war. But America has done something. Donald Trump has signed into law an executive order, if you will, that flips this on the head and have us in a tailspin. Tell us about it.
Well, this Defense Production Act is really at saving and procuring and increasing production of elemental phosphorus. Now, phosphorus is critical because it is critical for defense. It's a component of a lot of the semiconductors, the lithium-ion batteries, for example, like the radar sensors. So this is a very important element. But it is also critical in the production of Roundup, the glyphosate products. Now, what is interesting is that a farmer recently was assuring me that you notice that he uses apparently this Roundup, and he noticed that on it is saying this is not for use. It came from America, but it's not for use in the US. So even though they may be using it, the specs might be different. So the concentration might be different, because we know that experimentation and research has found that this thing is carcinogenic, it is neurotoxic, it will poison the nervous system, it can damage the liver and the kidneys. And these are proven things. So
and
there
by
are a lot of
carcinogenic,
things.
it means it causes cancer.
It causes cancer.
And this is proven. There have been many lawsuits, massive class lawsuits, if you will, that there have been rulings on these where the Monsanto or Bayer have been ordered by the courts to pay billions to persons who have been affected by this.
Yes.
But it is now.
Well, interestingly enough, to that point, there is some agency under this administration which is seeking to grant the manufacturers immunity, so they cannot be held accountable.
That is the U.S. administration.
Yes.
So that would roll back years of work and years of advocacy. This is how serious is this from your perspective?
If we should look on the local level, for example, it is widely used here in Jamaica.
This is Roundup that everybody uses to spray them. Well, Jamaican people have been using this to spray them grass and falling over from cancer like crazy, because this is what it does. Right. But it does more than that. When it says widely used
it's
here.
Widely used, yes, and as such, as you rightly alluded to, it will penetrate the soil and eventually could get to the water aquifers. So, the distribution of it is out of control. For example, if one person is located on a higher level, on a hill, for example, and the person below them is trying to do organic farming, then just by gravity feed, that will draining can contaminate another person, unintended, contamination.
What impact do you think this will have? Because Jamaica never subscribed to the fact that this was a dangerous element. As a matter of fact, the Agriculture Ministry over years have insisted that it's not dangerous.
Well, some agencies, especially out of Europe, are claiming that if it is used as directed, it may not be dangerous. But the fact is that there are convincing evidence to the contrary to show that it can cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, leukemias, hepatitis. It can cause miscarriages in women, infertility in men. So it is very far-reaching in its noxious effect.
And this is interesting. So now,
this probably would give us an opportunity to, especially in Jamaica, to see whether or not there is a place for going to more natural, as was in the past, mulching or composting. These things might sound as if it's old-fashioned, but they help in a climate in which we are now, where we are in a health war, and a lot of the drugs, for example, are being made redundant because of microbial resistance. So, as you know, this whole thing ties back into the so-called One Health program.
And when you say microbial resistance, you mean that people are developing resistance whole society is developing resistance to particular antibiotics or particular drugs. That's our listeners understand what you're saying.
So what it means is that, the antibiotics can no longer kill the germs.
A lot of these antibiotics.
So the germs themselves has become resistant to the drugs. So if you have gonorrhea, for example, and the drug that you normally use to treat it, you will be treating the person and they can't get rid of the infection. It has become...
But do we have a drug that can treat gonorrhea now?
Oh yes, we have it, but
but there
are certain cases, some resistant strain of the gonorrhea has already evolved in some places, maybe in Thailand and other areas in Asia.
So,
so this is a real challenge in terms of that.
All right, where do you see this going? What is done is done. You're saying return to the source, go back to what you know.
Yeah, natural approaches such as mulching, composting, and even, for example, where they have landscaping, that you have a lot of croppings of the grass along the whole country. These things could be part of the component of manufacturing our own organic fertilizers. Just because of the deleterious effects that can come from these even gramaxone, which is the paraquat, it is not completely safe. It is a very hazardous and neurotoxic agent.
We're almost out of time, and I wanted to throw one quick thing in because I know you've been looking at Project Artichoke.
Right.
And so let us get that. Tell our listeners what this is. And
this Project Artichoke is really a mind control mechanism which has been tried from the 1950s, 1951, 1956. And they have been using different ways, drugs that could, like, for example, using true serum, so they can give you that. So on the spot, you'll be not able to tell a lie.
And this information is becoming more available to us now because of the declassification of CIA documents that just happened last week, I think, where these documents were declassified.
Right.
So it's something similar to MK Ultra, isn't it?
That's correct. It evolved into MK Ultra in the 70s, time of the Iran-Contra and so on. And who to tell if it's still clandestinely going on until now?
Well, do you have the information in terms of what was...
well, let us look at it. You have they use drugs that are fast-acting, and they also use some which are long-acting. For example, things that could be added to food, could be added to your cigarette smoking, could be added into alcohol. And so you would have been...
And vaccines.
And vaccines as well as injections, that's correct. Yeah. So these things could have been passed on without an individual's knowledge of what the contents are.
So what was this? Project Artichoke? Was this
the basis of it was to be able to control or program the mind in a sense that they could get information out of you in a hurry, or you could be programmed to carry out activities beyond your own will.
I think that is somehow probably found its way to Jamaica. Because when you ask, what happened? What happened to us?
Right.
Is it in the food? Is it in the water? Is it? But then when you see these unclassified documents,
right?
And I've isolated just a paragraph from one of the documents that says, you're talking about the drugs that you just mentioned. Right. This type of drug should also be capable of use in standard medical treatment, such as vaccinations, shots, etc., and include chemicals or drugs that can effectively be concealed in common items, such as food, water, Coca-Cola, beer, liquor, cigarettes.
Wow.
This is an insidious, wicked act.
Yeah, and it is not far-fetched because we know that, for example, something as banal as rice naturally will have some levels of cyanide in it. But from time to time, there has been found to be other contaminants such as cadmium, for example, arsenic. And these are here in low doses that if you are consuming it, you won't have immediate deleterious effect. But over time, you can be led into depression or agitation, as the case may be. And these are some of the means that will now make you more prime to be manipulated mentally.
As we said before, this is a food war. Thank you so much, Dr. Arthur Green.
Thank you.
Out of time, but this is part of the wider warfare, because health warfare, food warfare, water warfare, land warfare. This is a wider war that if we take the eye off for one, we'll think it's just only that thing we are going down in Iran, but it's a much wider stuff.
And the common theme to it is loss of sovereignty.
Loss of sovereignty.
In all of these aspects that you said,
As you heard Puff said just a while ago, I mean, when you talk about sovereignty, you're talking about power dynamics. Yes. And the Prime Minister of Jamaica has made it a point all the time to, in this new order, if you will, to kind of underscore that, because I think he understands the extent to which Jamaica
remains a vassal state.
That's it. Yes. And that's a shame. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Arthur Green. All right. Listen up. Top draw dollars, pick 2, pick 3, pick 4, hot pick, and the cash pot early bird draws are coming up next. So stand by for the cash pot draws. We have much more to come inside of the Africa Forum. We're going up until 10 o'clock. The big A comes in at 10. By the way, tell your friends that we're streaming live on YouTube and on Facebook. We're live. All right, time on IRFM is 8:30, and we're standing by.
Welcome to the official live drawing of the Supreme Ventures Lottery Games. This could be your lucky day. Get your tickets out and let the games begin.
Good morning and happy Sunday, March 1, 2026. I'm Sharnika and welcome to the Supreme Ventures Early Bird Game Draw. Now, before we begin, let's have a quick look at last night's winning numbers. All live draws are being supervised by the Betting, Gaming and Lotteries Commission and observed by the independent auditing firm PwC. Now, let's put some money in your top draw. This morning's jackpot begins at $200,000. So here are now your winning top draw numbers. And first off a top draw this morning, we have ball number 4. Your second winning number, that's a lucky number 15. Now next in line is ball 17. Making its way down is a lucky number 2. And for that $200,000, you're gonna need ball 18. And now let's pick your play with our dollars game. I hope you're feeling lucky. Keep those tickets out. Here we go. And of course, let's begin dollars with a lucky number 36. Your second winning number, that's 23. Following 23 this morning is a lucky number 27, as well as ball 29. Making its way down slowly but surely is the number 25. And here comes 35, as well as ball number 9. Keep those tickets out because here comes a sweet 16. And we count down to ball 15. Next up in line is 24. 18 is next. Now let's wrap things up with a lucky number 19. And now for some easy winnings of their pick 2 games. So let's play. And first up a pick 2 for your early bird draw is 6. Your second winning number is 23. Now once again, your winning pick 2 numbers are 6 and 23. Up next, you can play it all of 3 ways. Of course, it's a pick 3 game, so let's play. Here we go. The first winning pick 3 number is 5. Your second winning number, what's it gonna be? That's a 4. And the third and final winning pick 3 number is 9. Now once more, your winning pick 3 numbers are 5, 4, and 9. Now it's time to turn up your winnings. Get ready for pick 4. Here we go. And first up, we have a lucky number 2. Your second winning number is ball number 5. Now what will your third winning pick 4 number be? 4. And the fourth and final is 5. Now once again, your winning pick 4 numbers are 2, 5, 4, and a lucky number 5. Now this one, it is for win, so let's heat things up with hot pick. And the early bird winning hot pick number is 14. So congratulations to all Hot Pick winners. Again, your winning number is 14. Now you live to play it, but can you win it? Get ready to be a big cashpot winner, and let's see what the winning cashpot number will be. And the early bird winning cashpot number is, here it comes, lucky number 13, and the lucky mark is police. Now let's mega those winnings, and of course, good luck. Keep those tickets out. Here it comes. And a white ball was selected, and now it's time to monitor those winnings, so good luck once more. Here it comes. And the white ball was selected. Now let's take a look at the early bird winning numbers, and of course, congratulations to everyone who won. And please join us again at 10:30 a.m. for more games you love to play. I'm Shranika. Have a supreme morning.
Hope you were a big winner. Play your favorite Supreme Ventures games every day and tune in for our live draw 6 times a day at 8:30 a.m., 10:30 a.m., 1 p.m., 3 p.m., 5 p.m., and 8:25 p.m. on this station. Supreme Ventures, making winners every day.
All right, that was your early bird. Top draw dollars, pick 2, pick 3, pick 4, and cash pot draws. Congratulations to all of today's winners. Join us again at 10:30 a.m. for another chance to win in top draw dollars, pick 2, pick 3, pick 4, hot pick, and cash pot draws.
Visit eLand Jamaica to access land-related information anytime, anywhere in the world. The time by the NLA is
now 8:35.
Power in great moments. If you have financial needs, Chris and Charles will fix them for you. Power in great moments since 1992. Oh, we have it all. Power in great moments. Relax, you got Chris and Charles. Oh, we have it all. When you think loans, think Chris and Charles.
Moat presents Big Money Bingo day and night event starting at 10 a.m. 3 Hills Ball Ground, St. Mary. Football match during the day. Bounce about for the children. Food and liquor on sale. Saturday, March 7th starting at 10 a.m. Top prize US $1,000. Music by Little Shabba from Notorious Sound and Dynamic Sounds. Early bird tickets $2,500, $3,000 at the gate. Sponsored by Mitzpah Funeral Home. For more information and tickets, call 876-841-9594 or visit Matt Fine Choice Supermarket 876-917-1951.
Jamaica, the countdown is on. Reggae music. February 28th and March 1st at Hope Gardens, Kingston. Experience 2 unforgettable days of music and culture at the Lost in Time Festival. Featuring Chronix, Protege, Leela IK, Jester Royal, Jenna and Mortimer, Tissian Chin, Tanny Stevens, Diani, and many more. Tickets available at Kaya Kingston and Trax Hall, the live store in Pimento's Devon House, and online at lostintimefestival.com. Lost in Time Festival. Don't miss the moment. Moving.
All aboard!
The biggest annual reggae party on sea will unfold April 1 to 6 as the Love and Harmony Cruise sets sail from Miami to Jamaica and back with one stop in the Bahamas.
Okay, folks, welcome aboard. We are now ready to set sail.
The exciting 6-day, 5-night cruise will see the likes of Barris Hammond.
Every time I think of saying goodbye,
Pinchers, Busy Signal, Maxi Priest, Romain Virgo, Agent Sasko, Tanya Stevens, Carlene Davis,
Everybody needs a little help sometimes.
and Minister Marion Hall.
I said, I've been accused.
taking center stage. IRFM personalities parading in their school uniforms, PJs or lingerie, flag colors, shorts and shades, all whites, and even formal wear with masquerades will traverse the decks and halls of the Norwegian Joy as we give you up-to-the-minute info on the action on the cruise, both on radio and on all social media platforms as they unfold. Coverage of the Love and Harmony Cruise 2026 comes to you all courtesy of Tiles Are Us Limited, Balance Valley St. Elizabeth, for tiles, tools, in every household fixture. Call 965-1896. Lico Ochi Seafood Restaurant. Get all your favorite seafood done to order. Call 852-6430.
Digicel, better connected.
Boscobel Hardware, Stewarttown St. Mary, for all your building needs. Where every day is a sale day. Call us at 876-810-6986.
Calvin's Pharmacy, better health, better prices every day. 8 Peck Street, Linstead. Call 876-440-2108.
Queen Kamarla, promoting single Respect Me on all platforms. Follow her on IG at Queen_Kamarla_the_baddest and YouTube at Queen Kamarla Official 1983.
If you want me to be your number one, you gotta respect me. Respect me.
Advanced Scales and Equipment Limited. Precision that powers Jamaican businesses.
Brown's Records promoting Heal This World Rhythm featuring Richie Spice, Lola Smiles, Turbulence, Chesedek, Luton Fire, and more on all streaming platforms.
Heal the world with love is a blessing from above. Whoa.
Base 13 production promoting Ras Nigo's new single Burkina Faso, distributed by DistroKid and available on Spotify, Tidal, VPAL Music, and all other streaming platforms.
A Burkina Faso, Africa rich and it a grow. Burkina Faso, yo, that's how we a go.
All right, we're back with you. Nia, come back, because I'm just hearing from Nia Monifa Tisha Williams Green that we just had an earthquake. I didn't feel it. I'm in the studio. Come grab this here, sir. Tell me what you heard and what you see and what you found online. Because at 8:40, 20 minutes now, going up to 9 o'clock, we're back with you inside of the Africa Forum. All right. So you actually felt an earthquake just now? We're not hearing her. Why we're not hearing her? Put on your mic, put on your headphones so we know that you're there. And Peter, who's behind the microphone, Peter said you never feel it, Peter. That was about 8:34, she says. What you felt it? I'm not hearing her. What's happening? You're hearing her? Okay. All right, I'm not quite sure why I'm not hearing you, but anyway, so yes, you felt it. Yes, we're hearing you now.
The shake.
Okay.
And saw the door shaking and.
Okay,
yeah.
And then you checked your.
I checked Google.
And what Google said?
It was a 4.1 magnitude earthquake.
Felt in which areas?
The Kingston.
Well,
It's near Kingston.
Near Kingston, so that is we then. I don't know. Did anybody else feel the earthquake? Because this is near Monifa Tisha Williams Green. We call out all her name when she's in the studio with me. And she's assisting our broadcast assistant, Shanice, this morning, and also assisting Peter. Is she doing a good job, Peter? How's the work now?
It's good so far.
All right, okay, because you've been producing all over the world. It's about time we do it in the studio. But yeah, great. Well, I don't know. Did you feel the earthquake, and did anything happen where you are? Let me know. Maybe the earthquake is a reminder for me to say that today is Burning Spears Solar Return. Happy Solar Return, Burning Spears. So I have Burning Spears set up for play, and it's just not happening. We started with Burning Spears. You remember what happened this morning? Do you remember that when we came here this morning, so I relieved DJ Shade Unstoppable, and he was a DJ, so him reconfigure everything in the studio. So when we came in, I couldn't get my theme playing. And you remember all that thing that happened there, Peter? Do you know that the two songs that we had queued up to play, If the Theme Never Worked, were Burning Spear, and we actually started one, Slavery. And that in itself, should I tell we say, is Burning Spear trying to come true, because nothing ever wrong with the stuff. So, Burning Spear, you've done this before. This is not the first time where it's your solar return and you just decide that, yeah, we must play. We must respect Burning Spear. And so, thank you for reminding me, Dennis Isis, that today is the solar return of Burning Spear. I just wasn't conscious of it, but the music that selected itself this morning when we came and refused the theme to be played was Burning Spear. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for reminding me. And happy solar return to Burning Spear. Burning Spear, we play your music almost every Sunday morning, and I don't know what happened just now, but we have the music queued up and it's just not playing. All right. Good morning. There are a whole lot of messages coming in. Okay. K-Dot. So I'm seeing you, K-Dot. And you said, yes, 2 strong shakes. Make me wonder if they're drilling near us in the region. We have been having regular little tremors in East Rural St. Andrew. Well, I'm not just drilling. Enough things are going out to see there. I don't have much to say. There's a lot happening. And, yes, K-Dot. So K-Dot is saying that he felt it. And, Denise Isis Miller says, earthquake in Kingston. Yes, 1. Wow. Okay. Isis, did you hear the Burning Spear this morning? Because we literally came in with Burning Spear. And when the theme refused to play, and now I'm trying to play back the same, thumb drive with Burning Spear, and it's just not happening. But thanks so much for that, Isis. Good morning to Brother Jerry Small, who we heard from very, very early this morning. Jerry, I hope you're there. Hey, you know who I'm waving to? I'm my best friend, Dawn Eaton, because she just texted me and said, I watch you. Donnie, stop it. All right. She's in London. Hey, Donnie. And quite a few messages coming in. All right, we're going to be going to Natisia, because I know she's trying to log on to Zoom. We're going to be talking to Natisia Bahartsing. One of the things that we didn't say this morning, I think maybe by the way we mentioned it, that the Strait of Hormuz has been closed. But we've been talking about that for months and months and months and months. But what would happen in the region once there is war in that region? That's why I tell you all the time, check out your map, look on it, your globe, Google it if you have to, and see where we are. My sister Elaine Williams, who is in Tunisia, watches. She said, I watch you too. All right, so, hi, Tunisia, so we have England, we have Tunisia. All right, let me just go now. Everybody got to know each other. No. Thank you for watching from all over the world. I think we do have look at her, she's right there. Natisia Bahartsing is joining me online right now. And, these are serious times and we're having these serious conversations. Oh, did I miss a time signal? Nah, there's a whole lot of things happening inside here. So let me just take a quick break and I come back.
Get more miles with the Ruby's Ultratech. Fuel the difference for peak performance and maximum savings. Drive more and save more. The time by Ruby's Ultratech is
now 8:47, and online is human rights attorney at law, Natisia Bahartsing, who is fresh from her trip to Washington, D.C., working with the World Bank and being part of that conference that just wrapped up in D.C. Natisia, Welcome. Thank you so much. I'm seeing you, not in the way that I
You're
should,
seeing
but
me?
yeah. Oh,
I'm
there
seeing
you.
you.
There you go. There you go. Now I'm seeing you. How you
Good.
do?
Greetings. How you do?
I am well. Last time you were in the studio just a few weeks ago, we know you were heading to the World Bank, and
Yes.
you. You know why I'm laughing, because I'm so
Where?
sorry. Because all this hunker is writing me, telling me that she bought this T-shirt to know that Peter Tosh. It's a
Good
very
morning, Aldit. Is Aldit on our time, or
she just inserted herself in the middle of our
is
conversation.
she on Jamaica time or Netherlands
She's on
time?
she's on Jamaica time. She cannot
Well,
say.
tell her. Well, good morning, Aldit.
Good morning, all days. That is a very serious business, because we're in the middle of we're talking about geopolitical upheavals. We're talking about war, and so many people are going through all kinds of emotions regarding this, not least of which are women, and especially women in conflict areas. And I know sometimes over time we tend to focus on specific areas, and I know this is a work that you have been doing for the last few years. It seems to me as if this is something that we're going to have to broaden when we talk about women in conflict. It seems that the whole world is a conflict area. Tell me about your work, and if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. And I've been listening intently this morning to Dr. Watson's comments, and he said something that stood out and kind of will tie in the conversation I want to have this morning.
Yes.
Because he said, when you blow up the place and some Palestinian woman or baby get killed, he was talking about the impact, the direct and indirect consequences of war, mostly the indirect that we miss sometimes when we see something happening in a far, far away land, and we really do not see how that impact us. And for persons like you and others who follow the major wars, and in times when you have like food shortages and those things, persons can relate. But what of the other consequences? So I wanted to start there.
And especially because this is March 1, we're in the middle of, we're at the beginning of Women's Month, which is Women's History.
And most of the work I do on the local level, gender-based violence, I've done original research on the gender consequences of what we deemed as chronic violence. And in that original research in 2022, the report has been launched in Jamaica, by the way. And that was attended, of course, by both the opposition and the government and all the major stakeholders in the civil society. And we had a thorough discussion. I'm sure you remember that. And therefore, we fleshed it out, the findings that violence is not just episodic. And we can't just look at it as gang war going on, or this is flaring up, and therefore we need to deal with it in that respect. It is a continuous, chronic situation that has long-term effect and will, over the years, impact societies and the most vulnerable. So in terms of the most vulnerable and marginalized, words that people use interchangeable but are quite different creatures, we see how women and girls, the elderly, people in rural areas, when systems shut down in urban areas and you're unable to get your grocery and your goods and supply. Persons say if the hurricane had hit Kingston, the whole of we are dead for hungry in a rural Jamaica. So just think about violence as another form of crisis when it starts to flare up in major metropoles where we rely on for food and all the other necessities. It's as nuanced as that, it's as deep as that, and it's a far-reaching, but it's also very localized.
And I know your women, peace, and security agenda is something that you...
But I think the women, peace, and security agenda, which I will speak of after I make this point, because it's very important to talk about the UN Security Council reform.
Yes.
We saw yesterday the Security Council holding its session, right? But if you look at the UN security context in the security reform, in the context, the need for the reform in the context of Africa and the Caribbean, there's a very urgent need. So we see the Security Council holding its meeting, and those sessions could have been held, so to speak, on any matter and in any country, right? Along the line of their mandate to maintain international peace and security, to investigate disputes, recommend settlements, etc. But currently, Africa with 54 nations, and this is the Africa Forum. So I wanted to take it from that standpoint to come back to the Caribbean. Currently, Africa, with its nations, representing over a quarter of UN members, holds no permanent seat on the UN Security Council, despite being the subject of roughly 50 to 70% of the dispute. That is problematic. And you've had advocates over the years talking, but recently a new development, the Secretary General went to the 39th session and made the historic remarks. Wanted to piggyback on that historic remarks to kind of let us see how we in the diaspora and advocates for Africa can start to advocate. I'm an advocate. It means I don't just speak on things and then let it rest. I think about solutions, and you and I are like-minded, my sister, so I'm bringing it here in your space.
It's welcome
I'm
here
saying,
because I heard that call that was made, although I was very skeptical, because I said to myself, now we have, Mark Carney's speech and the rules-based order falling apart and so on, and then we hear this call coming from the top, Africa, the Security Council. So I was very skeptical of it. Why shouldn't I be skeptical? Talk to me about that, because I really am.
I like what the Secretary General said, right? It's a profound statement and not just call that pulled at my heartstrings, so to speak. He said the absence of permanent African seats in the Security Council is indefensible. And that indefensible takes away the argument of the five permanent and the veto power of persons who believe that they have this right to rule anything on security and to be able, even when they're in the wrong, to be able to make decisions about it. We saw that when countries were vetoing in the Ukraine, Russia,
and Ukraine. But also, but Natisha, this is at a moment when America has walked away, more or less, from the United Nations, when other Security Council members, and I watched Amir yesterday, or the Iran rep, and I was saying that it was so futile. You know the Security Council could do nothing, would do nothing, and can do nothing. This is what hit me yesterday.
Yeah, but I take the point, Cabo. But you know what? I do understand exactly what you're saying. But follow me now. I am saying, if we continue in the scope of the Security Council, because I do understand the nuances, and I'm sure that's where you're going. I know, and I know your views, because remember, I'm a student in the school, right? But I think he's saying whenever decisions about Africa and the world are on the table, Africa must be at the table, regardless of it being solvable or unsolvable. The fact of the matter is, if you are not even having a seat at the table, your presence is something that will not make a change. And if 50 to 70% of the issues that they're dealing with in a room is about you, and you are not in the room able to vote on anything, there is a problem. So I wanted to kind of lay that there.
I take the point.
We need the presence. We need the presence in membership. We need the presence in veto. We need stronger regional representation. We need to increase the size of the Security Council, as is the 1992 UN General Assembly resolution put forward, right? Yes. So I wanted to lay that here for consideration, and we can watch the proceedings. I think if people start to have a sense of the fact that the Security Council that they're seeing meeting when there are these large crises, whether it be on Gaza and Russia that feels far-reaching, right now the representation is in question, and that right now we need our people at the table. Caribbean also. I know that CARICOM over the years had a block where they were taking into consideration the 1992 resolution and looking at the prescription to see what they need to also lobby for. So we're laying it here for consideration. That's one point.
Point taken.
We talked in the beginning. You know that I'm an advocate, so you and I are going to have these conversations.
This is a problem.
Make the point.
This is a problem. I just backed off, as you can see. but I do take the point you're making, right? The timing, I think, is what is making a bit of difference because of what we're going through right now. and the fact
Right.
that everyone and every agency and every block apart from the Board of Peace
Yes.
seem to have no power, and but I do take it. The timing is unfortunate, but I
It
do
is
take the point.
unfortunate.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I
yeah,
take that point too. So the core of my work and the core of the conversation that I would want to have in Women's Month, certainly the Women, Peace and Security agenda, which is a little known agenda, given that when it was put how do I put this in a very localized fashion? When it was brought to being in itself, fulsome self, by the said Security Council, right? It in its resolution 1325, its whole thrust was towards countries who were experiencing large scale war, kind of like what you're seeing in Iran and over the years, and even in countries like Somalia, countries that went through real crisis, but not just crisis, that had interlocking humanitarian crisis flowing from it. So the poverty from a hurricane, and then you have conflicts because people are fighting over food. All of these wrapped up in one. The resolution was said to be able to deal with women's participation, deal with women's, and it had four pillars. What I noticed when I started to study peace and security as a person from Jamaica is that it didn't start to touch and concern our lives, because we have a kind of a 9-day wonder culture. And I'm not just talking about Jamaica. I mean, as Caribbean past colonial realities, we focus on what a liquid now, is what I realize. So if this is not there, like Hurricane Melissa came, for example, and people start running up and down, and I'm like, but I was monitoring crisis and those things for the UN the other day. I started to look at the implications.
That kind of became acute because we were going through a tragedy, if you will, which was Hurricane Melissa. But you're saying this has to be an ongoing thing. That
Ongoing thing where we start to see it before it happens. We start to understand the system, understand what's in place, and understand how emergency response should be and how crisis should be. So the Women, Peace and Security agenda, by the way, I must say that tomorrow, our government, well, I don't know how to make sense of the full government, but I know, if I'm allowed to say, because I'm a participant, the Jamaica Defense Force, along with the interagency Canada, they're hosting a regional symposium on women, peace, and security.
Oh, brilliant! I will that because let me just take a quick break.
And that's tomorrow.
Hold on.
Hurricane Melissa tested us, but Jamaica rises together. Visit supportjamaica.gov.jm to report damage, request help, or donate. Together, we will rebuild stronger. The time by the Office of the Prime Minister is...
A minute after 9 o'clock. It's interesting that this is what we're talking about, and then we go right into the time signal saying the very same thing, so it means this is synchronicity. All right, so Natisia Bahad Singh, human rights attorney at law, is on the line. We're on Zoom. You can watch us on YouTube or Facebook or other IRFM social media platforms, or you can just listen to us on the 107s or irfm.net or download the app. There's so many ways. Flow channel 822. Natisi, I'm so glad you're online. Digiplay is what again? Digiplay channel.
I know you're going to ask me that, but you don't know, so Digiplay stop, me get irate, and I'm about to, get another survey.
I won't say Digiplay. I'll not say Digiplay anymore. But okay, so I interrupted just now because there is an event tomorrow that you are heavily involved in and you've been involved in for a very long time.
I have been invited to that table, and I'm grateful for that because, I do the people's work. So I am a speaker on the last day of the symposium on the 4th. It runs from the 2nd to the 4th. I think I'll be dealing with the monitoring and evaluation and all those things in terms of the implementation for the Jamaica Women, Peace and Security agenda. This is not new, though. I saw the Minister of Foreign Affairs speaking at the UN last General Assembly session about the implementation of it. Why this is important for me to even participate and for me to attend, because I used to talk about this agenda for years. Years ago, when I just started my gender work and my human rights work, I was like, but suppose you have war in the Caribbean. I remember when I was doing my master's in gender, my lecturer had a course called conflict, and when I looked at what other countries go through and what the peace and security agenda was about, I was wondering why we in the Caribbean in general did not implement it, as in the 4 pillars, women's participatory, all of that, because all these agendas have pillars. But as I said to you, I see strides here in the country, and my original research would have been before any of these strides, and I'm not saying that persons are looking at what I research. I'm simply saying part of my recommendations from my findings in my original research back in 2022 would have been this very implementation and to take it serious. So let's for me, I'd like to just say that the agenda recognize that armed conflicts have specific gendered impacts on women and girls, right? No matter if women and girls are not in the army, in the military, it has specific, and which must be prevented and addressed. And that it also states that women have the right to meaningful participation in decision making related to peace and security. I have done specific studies on Somalia because of its interlocking and what we would say consequences, and how environment plus disaster plus change in political structures impact the country. So Somalia was a case study for
for
me.
so many decades. This is like ongoing.
That's it. That's it.
1996.
That's why Somalia was the case study that I had to use to map. And when I focused on Somalia, I was better able to understand in a broad scale how the agenda worked. There's a marked improvement in women coming to the table, even in the religious culture of Somalia. You and I know but when women came to the table in those respects, it made a difference. So I have had cause to look at that. Now, advocates in the women, peace and security field, they're saying, we understand the agenda, but the agenda in itself has to evolve. It can't just focus from the 25 prescriptions of just having women in leadership positions in these peacemaking and solution-oriented programs. They're saying that we must see this agenda as a transformative agenda aimed at dismantling militarism, occupation, and the very patriarchal power structures. And patriarchy in its what we would call, I'm looking for a word, because when persons hear patriarchy, them talk about them, I say women and them gender and them something.
Academic meaning.
We are talking about the toxic, the toxicity in the culture of how men start these wars, so to speak, without the consideration of the impact on the most vulnerable. So I wanted to break that down. And that it's not simply integrating women into the existing militarized system. It is to see how one woman can make a difference, but also how it impacts the children in the little communities. When you fire a bomb, like I'm sure you're going to have casualties coming out of yesterday that had nothing to do with the war of leaders, but the vulnerable people keep feeling the brunt of these issues, or wars that start from the top.
115 children killed directly from the bomb. That alone, can you just imagine how that mushrooms out teachers and so on?
Absolutely.
We're running out of time, and I don't want to leave without talking about why you were. So this is the event for tomorrow, and we'll hear more about this. Is it open to the public tomorrow's?
I haven't seen a public link. I'm a guest, so the truth is I only have what they sent to me. But I will see. I'm not sure. I haven't gotten a link. It's an in-person invitation, so I am not sure.
All
Is the
right.
point?
Okay. So we'll hear more from you though when you've gone through that. You're gonna come in the
Right.
studio, I know, also because we have a whole lot to talk about. But you're just back from
Yeah.
DC as brief
Yes.
with brevity. Tell us
Of course,
about
women, because
yes.
we're short for time. There's a lot going on. Right. So I was in Washington. I was in Washington at the World Bank headquarters for the launch of the Women Business and Law Report 2026. I started the helping with the research, so to speak. I didn't write the report, but I was a contributor from Jamaica. I'm an official expert contributor to the World Bank on gender equality. I've said this in this space before. They've asked me in December 2024 after my second report, after my second going to help them with second report. And so it was an honor for me because when your work is being used and is integrated into reports that can change lives. I mean, what more can you ask for? Really, is that? No, I wanted to say that in the findings, the findings are quite surprising because even though we're making strides in what we deem to be gender equality, there is a shockingly large gap when it comes to existing laws and enforcement in gender equality. So what we did was to weigh what the countries across the world, about 190 countries, and also what is it that you say you have in your law, on your books, preventing and protecting the atrocities and economic development, and then what is really taking place in practice. And I think that was the gap because over time you will hear that Jamaica have a law that says women must grow what they eat what they grow, and But when you look at implementation,
yes,
how is that working out for women? And that report dive into those kind of things. So the quick findings today, less than 5% of women worldwide live in economies that provide anything close to full legal equality. And not a single economy has secured all legal rights needed for women's full economic participation. And that even in countries that have modernized laws, women still face constraints that shape the work they can do, the business they can start, and safety. And they need the safety that they need to pursue opportunities. And finally, even where gender equality and equal laws exist, women often lack the institutional support needed to exercise their rights under the law. We're talking about the courts and the regulatory bodies, administrations, etc. They are, and the findings suggest that those are quite weak and under-sourced or too fragmented to make meaningful legal protection. And therefore, what I did was to look at not just our family laws across the board, laws dealing with marriage, property distribution, etc., but also looking at gender-based violence, sexual harassment policies in the workplace, how that contribute to women not being as productive as they should, going into the nitty-gritty of these laws that we have on the books in Jamaica, and also making a sort of recommendation as to what we may need in terms of reform and legal advancement.
So much work to do. I'm listening to you intently and knowing that, so much of this refers right back to Jamaica. I look forward to you coming in the studio and we're kind of, spending more
I want to
time
quickly add that I'm going to the Black Diplomats Academy in Canada at the end of March to their global summit, to have more conversations around the world's problem, but in a youth-focused kind of way, talking about how we can advance the cause of young people in terms of their development, in the sense of economic development and diplomacy goals.
Great work, Naticia. Great work as usual. So very proud of the work that you're doing. Look forward to reading, and I've been reading some of them already. But much more to having you in the studio and talking a bit more about this. I know you're in the West for a particular event. You want to tell us what it is quickly?
Yes. Well, today is the funeral of the young Romain Bowman. The family, Every time I talk about it, I don't even know how to talk about it. You know, the little one who was killed in that awful event on January 1st in Montego Bay, Granville. Today is the funeral, so I landed in Montego Bay to be able to attend and to give my support to the family. It's an ongoing matter. I am told that Indicom has wrapped up or is close to wrapping up their investigation. So we've been quiet on that because, you know, as a lawyer, I am very clear about how the law works. And on the localized level, we're very clear that we need to make sure that we know what those findings are before we know what course of action to take. So right now on the social level, I am here heading into the community to give support, attend the funeral, and then we take it from there. So you'll also hear more about what is going on in terms of the localized human rights approach up to the UN level if we need to make sure justice prevails for the family.
Keep us informed and sending love and light and a lot of hugs to you, to the family today as they go through this period of grief. Thank you so much, Nats, and we talk very soon, I hope, in studio.
Yes, my sister. Thank you so much for having me as usual, and blessings. Hail up the family for me. My family, your family.
There you go. There you go. All right, Leticia Bahad Singh there, and she is a human rights attorney at law.
Expungement of criminal records provides eligible Jamaicans with a second chance at life. Apply today. The time by the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs is
now 13 after 9 o'clock.
Rock to the majestic vocals of Queen Kamala, paired with the raw, soulful fire of musical missionary Ginger. Witness masterclass in musical chemistry. Their synergy is a bridge between the traditional and the future. New beginnings, Queen Kamala, featuring Ginger. Now streaming on all digital platforms.
The UCC Business Development and Consulting Institute introduces the Starting a Business 101 workshop. Dive into the fundamentals of launching and running your own business with our comprehensive workshops. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or just starting out, these courses offer invaluable insights and strategies to navigate the journey with ease. Choose individual courses or bundle options tailored to your needs. Don't miss out on this amazing opportunity. Visit the UCC BDCI website at www.bbci.co to get started.
All aboard!
The biggest annual reggae party on sea will unfold April 1 to 6 as the Love and Harmony cruise sets sail from Miami to Jamaica and back with one stop in the Bahamas.
Okay, folks, welcome aboard. We're now ready to set sail.
The exciting 6-day, 5-night cruise will see the likes of Barris Hammond.
Every time I think of saying goodbye,
Pinchers, Busy Signal, Maxi Priest, Romain Virgo, Agent Sasko, Tanya Stevens, Carlene Davis,
everybody needs a little help sometimes,
and Minister Marion Hall.
I said, I've been accused.
Taking center stage. IRFM personalities parading in their school uniforms, PJs or lingerie, flag colors, shorts and shades, all whites, and even formal wear with masquerades will traverse the decks and halls of the Norwegian Joy as we give you up-to-the-minute info on the action on the cruise, both on radio and on all social media platforms as they unfold. Coverage of the Love and Harmony Cruise 2026 comes to you all courtesy of Tiles Are Us Limited, Balance Valley St. Elizabeth, for tiles, tools, in every household fixture. Call 965-1896. Lico Ochi Seafood Restaurant. Get all your favorite seafood done to order. Call 852-6430.
Digicel, better connected.
Boscobel Hardware, Stewarttown St. Mary, for all your building needs. Where every day is a sale day. Call us at 876-810-6986.
Calvin's Pharmacy, better health, better prices every day. 8 Peck Street, Linstead. Call
0876-440-2108.
Queen Kamarla promoting single Respect Me on all platforms. Follow her on IG at Queen_Kamarla_the_baddest and YouTube at Queen Kamarla Official 1983.
If you want me to be your number one, you gotta respect me. Respect me.
Advanced Scales and Equipment Limited. Precision that powers Jamaican businesses.
Brown's Records promoting Heal This World Rhythm featuring Richie Spice, Lola Smiles, Turbulence, Chesedek, Luton Fire and more on all streaming platforms. Base 13 production promoting Ras Negos new single Burkina Faso, distributed by DistroKid and available on Spotify, Tidal, VPAL Music and all other streaming platforms.
Burkina Faso, Africa rich and it a grow. Burkina Faso, yo, that's how we a go.
All right, that makes two of us. We're heading to Burkina Faso. 18 minutes now after 9 o'clock. You're inside of the Africa Forum. This is Running Africa. And just to remind you, we're streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, and all of our social media platforms. Plus, we're at irefm.net. It's all free. You can also download the app and listen to us online at the Google Play Store. And you can listen to us on your television. Flow Channel 822 and Digiplay 784. And, of course, on your radio on the 107s, 107.1 all the way to 107.9. There is no excuse not to find us wherever we are. So thank you so much for staying with us at 18 minutes after 9 o'clock. You know, I'm going to tell you a little story. It's going to take about 30 seconds, but maybe not so much, maybe 10 seconds. You know when you try to find someone for your entire life and in radio, and like every Kwanzaa, you write an email or you dial a number that you see online and you're just not connecting. And then after a while you say, okay, it will happen organically. And then you get a letter from Michael Barnett says, Sister Karabu, do you, Professor Malife Asante, Kete Asante will be in Jamaica. Do you want him on your program? And I'm thinking, but I spent my entire life trying to find him, to get him on my program. And just out of the blue, Michael Barnett says, well, he's coming to Jamaica. Michael wouldn't understand the half of it. Professor Malife Asante, thank you so much for joining us inside of the Africa Forum this morning. All right, I'm not here.
Thank you. Thank you so. Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. In fact, I've been looking for you all my life. So we finally connected through Michael. Dr. Barnett had invited me to UE, and I said, it's really wonderful to be here, and certainly to be on your show is one of the highlights of my life and my experience.
It's very mutual. I don't know how we're going to get over this because it's totally mutual. We're going to spend some time talking about this, but your work has been a guide through a lot of what I do in this space. And many years ago, when Queen Mother Marianne Samad called me, and it was like 1990 something, like early 90s, maybe 91. Or 92, I can't remember, but it's early 90s, maybe mid. And she said, well, there's something that you're going to have to lead the charge on in Jamaica. I have been doing it, but without the kind of promotion. And she told me about Kwanzaa. And we started doing it together over the years until there was a point when it really got, in Jamaica, it was a big thing. And then after a while, it's kind of tapered off, and there are people who still celebrate. But your name, of course, when we talk about that, always comes up. Tell us about that work.
Well, thank you very much, because my life has been dedicated to not just revitalizing, but to continuing the long history and tradition of African culture in the world. In fact, all human beings start on the continent of Africa. Homo sapiens didn't start anywhere else except Africa. So our history is the longest in the world. And before 70,000 years ago, everybody in the world was black. There was nobody else because we had not migrated from the continent of Africa. So the celebrations, the rituals, the traditions that we have inherited for thousands of years, many of these certainly were destroyed during the period of colonization and the period of the enslavement. And we in the diaspora and many times on the continent, we have sort of forgotten our traditions. We have lost our memory. We have lost our way. And we have not only lost our way, but we have taken on the ways of others. So that consequently, because of that, there has been confusion, even in our children, about who we are and our identity and so forth. So Kwanzaa, created by Dr. Maulana Karenga in 1966, was an attempt at reconstruction. And his idea was to discover in African history the sources and the elements that were necessary to reestablish in the diaspora a linkage to our ancient classical civilizations. And that's where he came up with the idea of Kwanzaa, and he used the name that came out of the Kiswahili language, because the Kiswahili language is one of the most fluid languages in Africa. It's spoken by a small ethnic group, but that is, it originates with a small ethnic group of about 200, 300,000 people, but it's spoken by about 60 or 70 million people across East Africa. And it also is a language that's not tonal, so it's easily accessible to most people, even in the diaspora. So it is one of the official languages of the African Union, by the way. In fact, it is the maybe the only African language that is an official language of the African Union. So it's a very, very powerful language. And he chose that language in the 1960s and said, look, all of us in the diaspora ought to at least have some knowledge of the Kiswahili language. And Kwanzaa, coming out of his theory of kawaida, was a very significant aspect of that historical memory. And I think that in Jamaica, of course, with your support and the support of others, it was a very, very large movement. And I'm just really delighted to be a part of that whole history.
Of course. And let us look a little bit at this historical memory that you talk about, and that process of forgetting. How do we reclaim that memory? Kwanzaa, of course, underscored, but as you have written and spoken about a lot, the importance of reclaiming memory. How important is that? And is it possible to reclaim our memory?
We're going to lose some, obviously, and all people lose some memory, but the significant aspects are always regainable. Here's what I mean by that. Each of us, for example, in whatever our actions are, in whatever aspect of life we're in, whether we're in accounting, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, biology, whether we are in social sciences, whether we're driving a bus, whatever we're doing, each of us, as people of African descent, have to ask a fundamental question about every action. What did our ancestors think about this, or how would our ancestors have thought about this? And when you ask that question, as I did, as a young boy growing up in the south of Georgia, in the cotton fields at 11 and 12 years old, looking up and asking myself, what did our ancestors think about this, that, or the other? That is where I began to develop the notion of Afrocentricity. Afrocentricity was African people putting themselves at the center of their own history, not being on the margins of Europe, not being on the periphery of what the British or the Spanish or the French are doing, but we, African people, as we are the agents, we are the makers of civilization, we are the makers of history. What did our ancestors think? That's the regaining of memory. Because when you start thinking about that, it really takes you into some crazy places. You got to say, well, wait a minute. We're doing this, but what did our people do? So you got to study. You've got to study history. History, Malcolm X taught us. It's the basis. It's the framework for everything else. We put everything else on it. But we got to know history, first of all. If you don't know history, everything else is confusing.
And I want to talk to you about history because for my motto in life, right, and from an early age is history is my alibi. But every once in a while I sit on the side of my bed and I said, but history, it has to be defined and we have to understand what history is because who has the power to make history? And how important is it for us to understand how history is cloaked in power and authority and ownership? And then how do you separate yourself from that into understanding what history is then, and do you then go after history, and where do you find it? I'm not quite sure if you're getting the point I'm making, but
no, I get the point. You're making a very powerful point, and the issue is that, but the issue is also this: the word history. Sometimes we say history is his story. But there's also her story. But we also know something else about this. We know that the people who define the historical events that they consider to be significant are those people who are often in powerful positions. However, even if other people are in powerful positions, they do not necessarily have to take away from us our ability and our agency to define ourselves. For example, let me give you an example. There are places, for example, on the continent of Africa, and I was in Burkina Faso 2 or 3 times. It was very interesting to go to Ouagadougou. But it's so powerful to go to the Maranaba's palace and to see the ritual that goes on every week at that palace of the people defending themselves against the invaders. And once you understand that ritual has gone on even during the time that the French occupied that country, and even during the colonial period, that Maranaba, that incredible paramount king ritual that goes on with the demonstration every weekend. It's a big tourist attraction now, but people go see it because they're remembering. And I think that even if we talk about sacred places, for example, people say, well, Mecca is sacred. I say, well, wait a minute. How did it become sacred? Who made it sacred? The Arabs made it sacred. People make their places sacred. I tell people that the Lake Basum tree in Ghana is sacred. Who made it sacred? The people of Ghana made it sacred. Ili Ife in Nigeria is sacred. Who made Ili Ife, the place where God created the earth? The people made that. People make things sacred. And in our situation as African people in the diaspora, whether we're in Brazil or Colombia or Jamaica, whether we're in Canada or the United States, what has happened to us is that we have been moved off of our own terms and we live on other people's terms. We don't live on our own terms, because if we lived on our own terms, we would make our own things sacred. We will honor our own things. I would be in Jamaica, and everywhere I would go, I would see Queen Nanny. I would see in the gift shops, I would see images of Queen Nanny. I would see all the historical figures of Jamaica would be out there. Paul Bogle would be. I would see all of this, and we don't do that. You see, and that's on us. That's not on the European. That's not on the Asian.
So there's an ongoing process of forgetting, even when we could create the rituals around remembering.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let me take a quick.
We are capable of that. We are capable of everything.
Let me take a quick break, Prof. We'll be right back.
Me feel joy at Easter time. Purity Easter bun make me smile. Purity bun in my kitchen and I eating each and every slice, yeah. Soft and sweet, me like it. Purity bun make me feel nice, yeah. And it feel just right, the taste is so divine. Celebrate this Easter in fine style with Purity Easter Bun, pure, wholesome goodness. Purity Easter Bun, they're so fine and so divine, yeah.
Come and experience the ultimate UTV off-road adventure in Jamaica at Bush Trails Excursion Tours, where your adrenaline levels will soar. We're open Tuesdays to Sundays, and also something special for the kids on the weekends. So bring the entire family. Call 876-893-9825 or book today via website at www.bushtrailsexcursion.com. Bush Trails Excursion. Let's get dirty.
All right, we're back with you inside of the Africa Forum on the phone lines and Zoom. We're on Zoom, we're on YouTube. Right now is Professor Malife Kete Asante, and he's in Jamaica for a very special reason. I want to talk to him about so much, but the event is already gone. Don't know if Michael and Dewey can keep him a bit longer, but not all of us saw. Not all of us were there. So tell us why you came in, Prof. And I know you've got
Yes.
Michael there. I think Michael is with you also. Not sure.
Yeah, but Dr. Barnett and I go back more than 25 years, and actually we're celebrating two things. We're celebrating actually the centennial of Black History Month, started by Carter G. Woodson in 1926, and we celebrating a Reggae Month and the history of reggae in Jamaica. So I came down for that, and I'm very delighted that the University of West Indies had me to come down, and that Dr. Barnett has been a great guide to me and my wife, Anna, as we've been here. So
And you spoke, was it last week, Thursday, at UWI? How was that?
Yes, it was wonderful. We had a wonderful occasion, and I'm sure if Dr. Barnett is on, he could speak a little bit more to that. And but yeah, we had a wonderful event at the university, and people came out from the community, and there were many some of the old reggae performers who were celebrated and honored as well.
All right. I'm not seeing you, Michael, so I'm not sure you're there. So if you're there, let me know. Identify yourself, because I'm not seeing Michael right now, but I was told that he was in the space. But you said something just now that I want to go back to, Prof, which is how to ritualize our heroes and to mark events, to create our own history, or to and more than create, but to preserve our own history. How important are rituals to this process?
They are essential, and in fact, we love these days. Most of us in the African world, we love Traore in Burkina Faso. But the interesting thing about actually my wife's name, Yaninga, comes from Burkina Faso. Very interesting thing about Burkina Faso is that once you're in Burkina Faso, you are struck everywhere with the image of this great queen, Queen Yaninga, on horseback with a spear in her hand. That's the image from Burkina Faso of its resistance, of the creation even of the country. And so it's a very powerful image of the Ouedraogo community and of the people, the Mossi people, the culture of the people. And when you don't have rituals to reinforce the values of the people, then that's when we say, we ask, well, what's happening to our children? Where are our children? What they don't have it. There's nothing to reinforce those values. We created the first ethical system in the world, Ma'at. That was a system that for thousands of years maintained truth, righteousness, justice, order, balance, harmony, reciprocity. But when you lose the rituals that reinforce that, then you don't have anything. Unless what you do is you adopt those things from other people, whether it's from Islam or Christianity or something else, you try to replace it. But we had this before Christianity. We had this before Islam. We had this before Buddhism. We African people were the inventors and the creators of these forms, and yet we have lost them. And few of us now have begun to regain our sense of footing. But 500 years of European oppression has really dislocated us from ourselves and from our center. And so we don't even recognize our classical civilizations as ours. We think that there's somebody else, that maybe aliens created them or something. So this is our problem. But it's not of our own making, to say the least. I mean, we maintain it. That's of our problem, but the inception of it comes from the fact of destroying our names, taking away our spirituality, distorting our sense of relationship with each other. All these things were done during the period of what Dr. Marimba Ani calls the Ma'afa, the great destruction of African civilization and culture during the time of the enslavement and the colonization. But we are regaining our footing. I believe that.
This is the point I wanted to get to say, to what extent are we regaining our footing, to use your term?
We are, slowly, and sometimes people do not like social media. But here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that perhaps the greatest insurgency that we can have as African people is the insurgency of individuals like yourself and others who are conscious, who are actually now have more freedom to speak to the world community. That to me is that's the secret weapon that we have right now. Because before we would just have to depend on who is it that is rising up in the and that the people are identifying as our leaders and that kind of thing. But now we have millions of leaders all over the African world, and I love it. I think that's where we're going to get it. There's a lot of misinformation out there too, but there is also a lot of positive, powerful information.
I do agree with you.
Transform us.
Even as a communicator, I do agree with you as somebody who is in the media, that the latitude that we have to speak our truth, I think we've never had that before, and it really does make a massive difference. We hear coming out of Europe and the US this whole thing about disinformation and post-truth, and we're losing ourselves in this post-truth situation if we do not get a hold of these tools and inject ourselves into these spaces, especially to deal with to get to the young people. So I really do agree with you on that, Prof. I want to ask you a little bit about what's happening now in geopolitically speaking. We're seeing a war underway. We've seen many of these. This one seems a little bit different because of all the players. What's your thinking about what's happening right now, and within looking through our lens, and what's the responsibility of Africa and its diaspora in terms of how we engage with this and protect our own selves?
Well, thank you very much for that question. I think that we are the moral thermometer, actually, of the world. And we have to be. And in fact, the African nations are very clear. And in fact, African people are very clear that you have to always protect the vulnerable, That's the first. That's one of the first rules of ethics. You protect the vulnerable, and this was one of our has been one of our greatest legacies. And even during all the movements in the world, we believe that the people who are most persecuted are the people who we ought to look at and raise questions about. So, in a geopolitical sense, for me, it's very clear that the main problem in Southwest Asia right now. People call it the Middle East, but there's no continent Middle East, and there's no geographical area that's defined as the Middle East. I mean, middle means that you have extremes somewhere, and something is in the middle. That's not wrong. I call it Southwest Asia.
Yes.
In Southwest Asia, the biggest problem right now is that the Palestinian people have been persecuted. They have been actually abused. Their rights have been taken away from them. They've been violated for over 70 years. That's the biggest problem. So the problem with Iran, for example, and the problem with the U.S. and the problem with Israel, these problems are actually inherent in the mistreatment of the Palestinian people. And Africans are very clear on this. The South African government made a very clear and positive statement about the genocide of the people of Palestine. We cannot, as African people, stand by and watch the tremendous situation in Palestine and say somehow that we are human and we are humane, and that the real culprits are not the culprits who are oppressing the people. I mean, we were enslaved. We know what oppression is. We unless we have forgotten, we understand this situation. So the situation between Israel and Iran is that Iran was the only nation capable of at least holding Israel back from its absolute genocidal attacks on the Palestinian people. And the United States, of course, sees Israel as a client state. So this is that's the geopolitical issue that we're facing right now. And our position as African people has to be one of ethics and one of morality. And I think that without that kind of leadership, the world would descend into all kinds of irrational violence.
Of course, we've seen some leadership from South Africa on that. As I was saying earlier to Professor Watson, Hilburn Watson, there's so much fear among our people in terms of how we respond to these issues now, especially at the leadership level. These are two different areas of our nations that I suppose they're as separate as they can be right now. Your own thinking as to the role then of the people as opposed to the leaders, or should we be separating them like that? Obviously, there is a marked difference.
Well, that's you. You are so good at really parsing this out like that. But let me put it this way: that we deserve the leaders we have, because we are the ones, the people, are the ones who make the leaders. I mean, in the United States, the people deserve Trump because they made him Trump. And there are others of us who think that perhaps the masses of people are rejecting Trump. But whoever the leader is actually evidence of the morality of the people, the values of the people. And you cannot look at a situation where you have a person who is convicted of felonies who becomes a president of a country and say that the people didn't know what they were doing. I mean, they knew what they were doing. But part of it is a notion of white racial supremacy as an ideology, a political ideology in the United States. And I've said this over and over, that this is the fundamental problem that the United States has. Either white racial domination as a political ideology will destroy the United States, or the United States will destroy white racial supremacy as a doctrine. So one of the other, those things have to happen. Either we're going to have to get rid of white racial domination as an ideology, or we know that white racial domination will seek to have a society where you have only white males ruling, and that's the compact that they have, even at the highest levels. And in fact, we see more and more at the more ordinary levels.
Or black males with white male thinking.
Absolutely, that's a very good point, because you have to always make that point that black people can also be white racial ideologues, and we have them. We have black people who also are white nationalists, or black people who are white racists, and who believe fundamentally in white racial domination. And unfortunately, we don't have a lot of them. They're not the majority, but you do have enough. For example,
yes, that's true. We're looking at Haiti now, for example,
yes.
and the wall that is being built. The Dominican Republic is building a wall between itself and Haiti.
And Haiti.
Yeah, it's the craziest thing. Well, of course, I don't have to go through all of this.
The thing with the Dominican Republic and Haiti, of course, is that the Dominican Republic is trying to deny its African ancestry. That is one of the fundamental problems. And the other problem, of course, is that they want to identify as if they're Europeans, and they are therefore against the African part of them. And so you're talking about a nation of confusion. The Dominican Republic is, in fact, really at the height of it. Fortunately, it seems to me, I'm not sure, but it seems to me from the people who I know in Puerto Rico, that Puerto Rico has taken a different position, and they are, of course, embracing their African heritage for the most part. And that's because of people like Martha Vega and Marima Barberina, and a lot of other Puerto Ricans who are embracing their African heritage. But in Dominican Republic, you have no voices that I know of, or that have ever contacted me and said, hey, look, we are Afrocentric, we're African. I don't have that from Dominican Republic. But
They
I
are
have
the
it
Argentina of the Caribbean, and this is a serious commentary, because especially of the treatment being meted out to Haiti. I think that when we talk about Cuba, and we have to talk about Cuba, we must not forget Haiti, because what is happening to Cuba has happened and continued to happen to Haiti. And so in the region, what do you think about how this eventually pans out? Because it seems to me that there's a lot of complacency. We hear from Trinidad, and Trinidad has taken a position in the world that is frightening. Guyana is hardly different. Jamaica is on the fence. Barbados is pretending. And and yet here we are, just giving speeches. What's your thinking on what's happening in the Caribbean?
You brought me here to get me into trouble. I know that. I'm just what you got me here to walk into trouble.
I've been looking.
So let me get into some good trouble here and say that you have identified all the main points, and I am so happy to be on this program and hear you say that. But let me just say what I think. Ultimately, we have to, number one, as masses of African people, and I think will happen. First of all, the whole Caribbean, in my view, should be one country. Just like Indonesia has 1,000 islands, and Indonesia is one country. There's no reason why the Caribbean should not be one country, and with different parts of the country. But here's what I say about the future of the Caribbean. Cuba is a part of our history as deeply as Haiti is, and Jamaica and so the other countries. But these are the big countries. I mean, Cuba. I was in Cuba myself. And the interesting thing about Cuba is that I got a chance to meet one of the leaders of the revolution, whose name is Victor Drake. And most people in the United States have never heard of Victor Drake. But Victor Drake was the African Cuban who was responsible for 50,000 troops going to fight against the apartheid government in South Africa, and to help the African people in Angola and Namibia and so forth.
Yes.
And he was one of the leaders of the revolution in Cuba. And meeting him, I said to myself that here this great man is that none of us, few of us in the U.S. knew, and I'm sure in Jamaica we didn't know probably much about Victor Drake either, but yet knowing about him was such a beautiful thing for me, and was such a historic thing for me, that I said, like we talk about Dessalines, and like we talk about Queen Nanny, Victor Drake is in our history. This is part of our history. It's part. He is a Marcus Garvey type figure in Cuba, and we don't know that.
No, that's true.
Through all of our historical figures, and we brought all of them together, the women and the men who have done incredible things throughout this region, we would have a mighty, mighty country. But we need to recognize everybody and all these countries. I mean, the Haitian situation is one of long suffering, simply because the West has never forgiven it for defeating Leclerc's forces that had been sent over by Napoleon. They would never forgive Haiti for that. And the British didn't forgive them. The Spanish didn't forgive them. In fact, the whole thing was racial, and they defined it as a racial thing. And even when Haiti went and supported the Bolivarian Revolution in South America, people were angry. Even in South America, some people were angry that Haiti had to be the leader in that. So Haiti has suffered for its leadership, and we all have to praise the Haitian ancestors and know that those people who are today, who are actually many of them who have forgotten their own history, should have to remember it and have some values and strength. And being in Haiti, I've seen that over and over again when I'm there. That there's strength there, but there's also weakness, and that weakness, I think, comes from a lack of understanding their own history and appropriating that history in the curriculum of their children, to teach their children a revolutionary history.
Until we all remember.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I really enjoyed being on your program today.
I won't lose your number. Michael has to know now that you are somebody who have been looking for a very long time. I think I told him that. And that now that we found you, we won't let you go. So thank you so much for coming on this morning. And I hope you had a good time in Jamaica. And
I did. And Michael has given me a wonderful time. And I want to thank him, and I want to thank you.
Thank you so much.
All the people of this beautiful country. Beautiful country. The only thing I would say is that I was very sorry that y'all lost the basketball game the other day. But I said somebody else other than the African Americans have to beat y'all in something. Y'all are the nation of athletes and a nation of strong people and beautiful people. And I love Jamaica dearly with my heart. And may Bob Marley rest in peace, and Marcus Garvey, Queen Nanny, and Paul Bogle, and all of the heroes of this great country.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and have a good rest of your time in Jamaica, and safe travels back.
Thank you very much.
And to your wife also. All right, Professor Malife Kete Asante, I've been looking for him forever, and then he just turns up. How are you doing, Mr. Bigay? You're inside of the Africa Forum, and it is Running Africa, and we have 5 minutes. And the thing, Peter, please come and give us a wider pan, because I'm not seeing Bigay in this thing at all. No, that's so. I was asking you. This Peter I'm talking to. I'm not seeing you, no. I know you don't want to be in there. That's why I'm calling Peter. You realize I'm calling Peter Broadbur? Because, Peter, do not tell Big A what you're doing, but we just want a wider pan. We want a wider thingy. I am so large, big and large on here. I'm not seeing Big A at all in any of this. But I know that he was at IMC. And I know you've been pretty busy. You're not answering your texts anymore. You're totally... Well, I'm going to turn on your microphone. Sorry. Peter.
No.
Peter, just flash it, look at me, and come back to me. People have to see that he's here. We can't just hear him.
I'm pretty
Nobody knows you're there.
What you mean? They're not hearing me?
No, well, it doesn't matter that they're hearing. Peter, just flash us something. I mean, it's on me, Peter. It's on me. Right? You've been vexing me for about 2 days and that's it. I cannot believe it. Anyway, but I think I'm seeing Michael there. Is Michael there?
Yes, I'm here, Sister Kabu. I'm here.
Michael,
I don't know. Can you hear me?
You're tall, and we're
not hearing me.
Time, but
I guess it's the studio. Need to put my mic.
IMC, because you seem to have been a presenter.
Not a presenter, actually. I apart from just absorbing some of the knowledge that was dispersed throughout the day that I went, I was asked to be a part of the music pitch, where I was part of a parliament of judges, you could say, of disc jocks from across the region who would vet songs from especially new artists.
Oh, I saw that on the thing.
Yeah,
yes.
we would critique.
Yeah.
We would critique these songs and advise them as best as how to get it ready.
What was the collective like in terms of the was it was a competition or you just
No, man, it was not a competition at all. It was just persons who it is a dilemma among artists as to how to expose yourself using all the various mediums. And part of one of the discussions that was held at the IMC was about algorithms and it's possible not a failure, but how it does not necessarily suit the needs of emerging artists. So you're looking at the various mediums that these artists have at their disposal, radio being one of them, and of course the social media channel. But as I said before, we find that it is being saturated and not giving a lot of these new artists the exposure. So these new artists now are channeling radio among the channels to explore their new music. Because
but is radio channeling the platforms, the 100 million platforms of social media? Because radio itself has to platform itself within the new media.
Yeah, of course. And that was part of the discussion too. How will radio build a unifying force collectively across the Caribbean and across the world? And of course, when you're talking about Caribbean music, reggae is at the top of that. So that was part of the discussion. But as I said, the focus of the music pitch was for artists to bring their songs to disc jocks, especially prominent ones who understand the game, and they would, criticize these songs as to, how they would get it ready. And if you saw or heard anything that you liked, then you would simply tap into the artists, get their credentials, and they would send the songs over to you. So I have gotten.
So on a old play it first, but I will make it buzz.
As always.
There you go. But so what was the quality like though in terms of those that came in? Were you impressed or?
There were certainly a couple of good ones, but what I also found was that there was a lot of unfinished material. These artists were presenting stuff that was not finished. So maybe they weren't briefed as to what they should take to us. But what we heard was good stuff, but they weren't mixed properly. Some of them wanted harmonies and that kind of thing. But there was talent all around. The talent pool was excellent. It is just that the production aspect of it, as I said, the mixed and mastering and just the fine tuning of it was lacking.
So how is music being produced in your time now? But how is music being produced now then in terms of, because remember the day when, if the music reached the disc jockey 9 times out of 10, it's properly produced, right? So there's a big change in that. The artist is doing the whole 9 yards because him have the tools or she has the tools.
Yes, and a limited amount of persons. Sometimes it is not them alone, but a very limited amount of persons. The beat maker, perhaps, and the engineer, perhaps, but no, normally not more than 2-3 people, right? 4 if you're lucky. The era in which I'm coming from, you're talking about 8, 9, 10 people. You're talking about musicians, live musicians to begin with, which is like 5, 6 people. Then you're talking about engineers, which the recording engineer, the engineer who take your voice, is not the engineer who mix the product. Right, so it's 2 totally different persons that in the space.
The days of the master tape.
Right, that kind of thing. You're talking about harmony singers. And the harmonies in this time is just the very same person using different tools to manipulate their voices and that kind of thing.
Is that a bad thing? Because this is where the technology is going. So do you go with the technology or you try to, as a new artist, at least enter at a level where you have more of the human element?
That's a tough question because AI and all the tools that we have at our disposal now is so human-like that it is hard to distinguish between both of them if used properly. I ran an experiment prior to IMC with some persons who were in my space, and we were talking about the advent of AI. And I played a selection of songs, including one that I sent to you earlier on, right? And it was about maybe 6 or 7 songs, could be as much as 8. And I, said to them, because one of these persons was very hostile against AI, saying that it's killing the music and you can't tell which song is AI and which song is not. So I ran an experiment, and I played some songs, and I said, tell me which one of these songs are, is human-like and which one is AI. And he picked out about 3 songs that he figured was AI out of the 6 or 7. Right? And I said, yeah, man, me definitely know some of them are AI. But the other one, them, yeah, man, alive material. And I said to him, well, there you go. They're all AI.
Wow.
Right?
Wow. It's a conversation that I think when it comes to the entertainment industry, because I know we've been having this conversation for a while. It cannot, especially with the entertainment industry, right? That it I think it's going at a speed faster than many expected, and I think a lot of people don't know what to do with that.
There you go. So it is what you do with it that is going to be the end game, because it is there, and it is coming. It is getting better. I mean, exponentially. What it is going to be like next year is going to be 10 times what it is this year. It is not going to grow like a child that you grow and then you look around and say, when did you get here? Kind of thing.
You grow so big.
Yeah. How you grow so big? No. Tomorrow when you wake up, you're not going to be. I mean, you're in diapers today, and you're having gray hairs tomorrow.
When me and you have these conversations, people take it out of context and write me all kind of rude letters and narcissistic letters. I cannot manage.
I get them.
We expect that they will listen to us. This is a book I'm telling you about. This is a book I don't know if I'm reading this book now.
Oh, the geoengineered transhuman.
Yeah, good eyesight. Yeah. So anyway, honestly, the last time we had this conversation, apparently somebody heard it at the very last end when we played the music and we were laughing. One piece of letter I get, and there's a triangulation. The person who wrote that letter is a narcissist because there's a triangulation where it's sent to Shamara, it's sent to Isis Miller, it's sent to my email, it's sent to a whole heap of people, but it is a nasty letter. And all they heard, I'm sure, is that conversation we had at the end, accusing me of being excited about AI. I've been talking about AI from 2019, and deliberately 2019 because of what I saw happening going into COVID. And to be, anyway. So, the geoengineered transhuman, the hidden technologies of HARP, chemtrails, 5G, 6G, nanotechnology, synthetic biology, and the scientific effort to transform humanity. Let's say it, scientific effort to transform humanity.
Oh, yeah.
So what we do with it and how we understand it, I think, is a thing. So, Mr. Begay, this is how I'm leaving you. There was one thing I wanted to talk to you about. Oh, so I'm wearing my Peter Tosh shirt. Did you get yours?
And I was just about to wear mine today. It was an alternative to my T-shirt today, and I said, should I wear it or should I wear it? Until I said, no, let me save it for our special occasion.
Because buck up me, buck up Nia, we're all we were decked out in Peter Tosh,
Right.
And by the way, today is Burning Spear's birthday. I didn't remember. Isis told me, and I didn't Google or check for myself Isis, but I go with Isis say. And I played only half of
Mr. Rodney.
I played only half of Burning Spears, so I'll leave it up to you, Bigay.
All right. Well, I'll certainly celebrate with him tomorrow because you know how my son desires gospel and lovers rock.
Yeah.
So I'll definitely celebrate with Mr. Rodney tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bigay. We're making way now for the Bigay inside of the Sunday Sunshine. Thank you so much. We have been streaming live. As you can see, we're still streaming. And if you come right, yes, a Bigay, you get caught in the camera.
Yeah, I know.
I think we should leave it. No, you come give me a song, Bigay. Come on, give me a song because I don't know. The time is gone.
Come on, Peter Bradbury. Come on, turn off this thing.
Peter, don't turn it off. Go and give me a song. All right, thank you so much. Thanks to all of our guests this morning. And we'll see you next week, inshallah. What good? Tell them on how they. Thanks to Nia Munifa and to Shanice and to Peter Broadbar, a big team this morning. And Big A is up next with the Sunday Sunshine. My name is Kabu. See you next week.
It's controversial. After 5 years, I mean, final say, you are my cousin. It done gone, but already.